Hey, are you ever going to start this podcast you've been talking about for like forever?
Do you think that anyone will actually want to listen to something like this?
What is your plan for an introduction?
Are you sure you want to talk about these topics? People usually disagree.
3 hours? Are you crazy?
Do you think you're some kind of expert or something?
Are you planning to have an intro song?
What if a bunch of people get really mad and hate you over this?
Do you even know how to make a podcast?
Are you just doing this because you like to argue with people?
Don't let this be just one more thing that you talk about doing, but never actually do.
Wouldn't it be better to do just one episode for each topic?
Stop trying to change people's opinions. Just live your own life.
Dude, people are never going to agree. Just let it go.
Is this going to be a long intro? Because if it is, I'm bored already.
Okay, my rant today I know will be another ruffle some feathers rant, and again I assure you that's not my intention. This is really just something I am curious about because it really doesn't make sense to me. I have met women who won't read books or watch movies that have to do with the abuse of women, like rape, domestic violence, etc. I'm sure they have their reasons for this, and that's totally fine. I understand this. What I don't understand is that some of these same women enjoy reading books like 50 Shades. Just hear me out for a second. I have asked women why this is, and the reason I get is that to them it seems that these books like 50 Shades are not abuse because the woman is enjoying herself. Okay, fine, but isn't she still being treated as a sex object? Does this become okay as long as the woman is on board with it? Therefore things like pornography and prostitution would also fall into this category, right? In my opinion, this kind of just shows where our society is currently. Women can be treated as animals, and other women, for the most part, don't see a problem with it, as long as she is in agreement and is consenting to the abuse. It seems to me that we have lost something here. Honor and respect are gone for both men and women in these situations. We should honor our women, not treat them like nothing more than objects of sexual fantasy. And when we don't, I think that both the man and the woman are in the wrong. They're not functioning in the way that God designed them to function. Or maybe your argument would be that women are not being treated like animals in these kinds of books and movies. But is the only line drawn at simply whether the woman is consenting or not? In other words, is there any way to treat a woman wrongly or to disrespect her if she is consenting to it? And what about some of the rap music that very blatantly mistreats women in their lyrics? Again, some of these same women who won't watch a movie with domestic violence, rape, or any other kind of abuse will still sing and dance along with their favorite hip-hop artist, who are very openly calling women every bad name in the book and treating them as nothing more than sexual objects. I am not trying to justify any of these things. I am just really not understanding how some of it can be okay while others are not. Please help me understand. As always, I eagerly await your reply. My guest today is Robert Hamilton, one of my best friends and one of the funniest guys I know. I met Rob very early in my Christian life, and we connected right away, as he, his wife Amy, and his children would quickly become a big part of our lives. There are so many hilarious stories that I could share, and it would take a whole podcast to mention all of them, but I will share one of my favorites. This one really takes the cake. Rob and Amy had invited us over to their house for dinner. After dinner, for dessert, was cake. I can't remember if we had brought the cake over or if Rob and Amy had provided it, and I can't even remember what kind of cake it was. But our families were much smaller then, so only about half the cake had been eaten. Rob kept insisting that we take the rest of the cake home with us, and we kept insisting that they keep it. So when it came time to leave, Bethany and I purposely left the cake on the counter, said our goodbyes, and went out to the car. Once we had our kids, only 2 of them at the time, buckled into the car, we started to drive away. After driving about 3 houses away, I look up in my rearview mirror, and what I see is a madman at full sprint and not wearing shoes but only socks, running down the middle of the street behind me while holding a cake. Now keep in mind that it's only residential, so I couldn't have been going more than 10 miles an hour, but he was still keeping up. So as the good friend that I am, I gunned it and left him in the dust as he would eventually stop in the middle of the street, out of breath and holding half a cake. Such a great memory. But as funny as Rob is, he is also one of my favorite people to talk to, because like me, he is a deep thinker. We talk about some awesome stuff in this episode, like In-N-Out versus Whattaburger, Christian colleges, Michael Jackson, Green Day, We as Human, Stavesacre, Carman, Red, the band not the color, Disciple, the band not the Jesus follower, well maybe both actually, Shawn McDonald, Matthew West, Barlowgirl, the Benjamin Gate, Kenny Loggins, The Newsboys, Andy Mineo, Gateway Worship, Stevie Wonder, Stained, The Jacksons, Who Wrote the Book of Hebrews, Bathrooms and Locker Rooms, The Media, Different Mindsets, Gun Rights, Dylan Roof, Mental Health, Police Training, George Floyd, Abortion, Birth Control, Sex Education, Monks, Fried Okra, Getting Saved by the Butterfinger, Belief in the Heart, Prayer, the A.C.T.S. model, Joy versus Happiness, Absolute Truth, Tithing, and Women Clergy. Also, just as a heads up, next week's episode will feature Rob's wife, Amy. So with these 2 episodes together, you will get a neat snapshot into a really cool family. And one more thing. I didn't answer the question during the podcast, but after having some time to reflect on it, I would say that if I could be any breakfast cereal, it would be, I don't know. Because as always, this requires further questioning. Do I actually become the cereal? And if so, do I still think and feel as a human? If that's the case, then I wouldn't want to be eaten and bitten, right? So then I would want to be something like grape nuts, so that nobody would want to eat me. Or am I literally the cereal, meaning that every box in the store is just a teeny portion of me? So when eaten, it would just feel like a flea biting my baby toe? Or am I only what's in one box of cereal? See, these are all questions that I need answers to before I can truly answer this. But for now, enjoy this conversation.
What's up, man?
I can hear you. Nice. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome possum. Do I sound good or do I sound crappy?
Well, you still have the goatee, so that's working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only way my wife likes me, dude. I do anything else, she won't kiss me, you know? So what's going on, man? You got a little setup there? Are you in the bathroom?
Yes, it's my sanitary abode. Are you in a closet?
I am. Yes. Yes. And I always come out of the closet when I'm done. So, that's always important.
Well, you are on Pacific Standard Time, so it's part of the norm.
That's true. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Good.
All right.
41's rough.
Yeah. Did you just have a birthday?
Ish. Yeah. Right after Alora's, which is the more important one.
Oh, right. You're November too. That's right.
Yeah.
You're the 12th?
No, the 10th, right after Alora's.
Before Alora's.
No, really?
Yeah. She's the 11th.
Oh, I guess I was born first.
Yeah. But for some reason, I was thinking you were the day after Alora, not the day before Alora. So yeah.
Oh, did she skip ahead?
No.
No, but she's smart.
She's 25, dude. Can you believe that crap?
Golly, and she's married.
Yeah.
And how are they doing?
Good. Yeah, they're both doing good, man. They're living down in Whittier. She's doing, she got her degree in psychology, child psychology. So she's working with kids on the spectrum and with that field. But
are they close to the Getty or no?
The Getty Museum,
mm-hmm.
That's the one right off the freeway, right off the 101. You can see it up on the hill.
Yeah, the big one that we always take 4th grade field trips to. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how close they are to that, actually. They're about a 20-minute drive from Disneyland. So.
Oh, good for them. Okay.
Yeah, except they don't have passes to Disneyland. They have passes to Knott's Berry Farm because it's about 1/8 of the price. Touché.
I miss all those theme parks, man.
Yeah.
Six Flags is all right. I've been itching to get back there, but you drive 4 hours and you just got desert here.
Right. Well, you guys have the original Six Flags is in Texas, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it took me until I moved here to figure out what the Six Flags actually meant.
Yeah, I still don't know.
It's all of the Six Flags, Brian Hester, that flew over Texas or that owned a piece of Texas at one point.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
so the term Six Flags literally originates with Texas.
No, yes, and Six Flags.
Okay.
So you have the American flag.
Okay.
You have the Confederate flag at one point. You have the French flag, the Mexican flag, the Spanish flag.
Wow. Okay. Was that 6 or 5? I think that was 5.
Right.
You're missing one.
One more I missed. We have to go to the actual theme park.
Okay. You can't go
And actually, you could tell I'm not a true Texan because I forgot the most important one, which was the Republic of Texas.
Oh, okay. Okay. Nice. You can't forget that one, man. That's
Yeah. I can tell you're impressed.
I'm extremely impressed. Well, honestly, I was just thinking to myself, I don't know if you guys are Big Bang Theory fans, the show.
No,
Have you ever seen the show?
No, I've seen clips on
okay.
shorts now.
Well, Sheldon and his girlfriend do a show called Fun with Flags, and they have this YouTube show they do. It's hilarious. It's really funny. And I was just going to tell you, I just felt like I just was part of an episode of Fun with Flags with Sheldon Cooper.
If you can catch it, we originally watched it on Hulu before Hulu got big. But there's a series called How the States Got Their Shapes.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Which basically just means like how they decided where to put the fences.
Yeah, basically, and like why nobody wants that little sliver of Oklahoma. So.
Yeah, the panhandle.
Yeah.
So yeah, Amy has totally given up on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she was a fan, and that's how we actually stayed in contact with friends and family. But then it deleted like all of her pictures on one random update. And so yeah, the first like 9 years of Kirsty's life just gone.
Oh, and she didn't have them saved anywhere else?
No. And then she went out and bought a hard drive after that. But yeah, she's like, I'm done.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, she's on Instagram, so
Yeah, which I still haven't gotten yet. Which I'm assured by my children that just means I'm old, because all the cool kids have Instagram or Insta, as they say these days, and Facebook's for old people, is what I'm told.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's dying.
Which I own. I mean, I'm 40. I'm 45. If I'm not old at 45, I don't know what to tell you.
Wow. Wow. Has it been 20 years? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Golly gumdrops. No,
yes.
Almost.
Since we met?
Yeah, maybe 18, 19, something like that.
We met. Well, you tell me about us meeting. Maybe we have different memories.
Well, you had a goatee back then, so
I've had goatee most of my life. Actually, I grew one first when I was about 5, and I've pretty much had it ever since.
Golly. So I was in the police academy, and then we found Calvary Chapel Santa Maria, and I started the police academy like June of 2005. Washed out of the police academy at like December 2005, and then kind of the rest is history. So yeah, right around 2005. So I guess it's only been like 18 years or so.
Do you remember where's the first place you remember meeting me though?
Likely through church, but I think we bonded over the men's retreat.
Yeah. That's the first time I met you.
Oh, getting shot in the face. Yeah. It was probably you.
No, it wasn't. I have a different story about the paintball, but they were, I remember. So Bethany kept talking about this new girl, Amy, that she was meeting at some of the women's functions. Oh, and there's this new girl, Amy, and she's really nice. And they just, they're kind of new in the area, and they're new at the church. And, she was at some of the whatever women's breakfast or teas or whatever, whatever the women do. And so she was kind of getting to know her. She kept telling me about this girl named Amy. Well, then I had gone to the men's retreat, and then I met you there for the first time, because I don't remember ever meeting you at church until after the men's retreat. But I remember specifically we were playing basketball at the men's retreat, and I remember you had the UCSB sweatshirt on.
Yeah, Kirsty lost that. It was my favorite article.
Oh no!
Time. And it's somewhere on a field in St. Louis.
Yeah. So I remember coming home from that and telling Bethany, she's like, "Oh, how was the ministry?" I was like, "Oh, it was really good. I hung out with Thomas and some of the other guys that I already knew." And I was like, "Oh, I met this new guy named Rob. He's really cool. We kind of have a similar sense of humor, and we were like hanging out and talking and stuff." So, and it wasn't until like weeks later where we realized that the Rob I was talking about was married to the Amy that she was talking about, and it was like this big epiphany. It was like, oh, okay, you guys are like a couple. I see.
Yeah. I mean, how many different people do you know with the last name Hammy Han? I mean,
that's exactly. You're both still in my phone as Hammy Han, by the way. I can't bring myself to change it just because it's too funny.
Well, similarly, we did name our church band unofficially the Hamiltones.
Nice.
Thought about
nice. You. Everybody's got a tones, right? Deftones, Supertones. How's the kids, dude? How's your kids doing? How old's Kirsty now?
Man, they're growing up too fast. 34, I think.
Yeah, right.
I think.
Seems like it, right?
Yeah, no, she's awesome. So she just turned 20 back in September.
Okay.
And she has been pursuing culinary over the past 2 or 3 years. So first she started at everybody's favorite culinary restaurant, which is Taco Bell.
Of course. That's where, that's where me and Bethany both started.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first ever job was Taco Bell, as was Bethany's.
So, still hoping she meets the right guy from it. But so she was at Taco Bell. And that's actually, she saved and saved and saved, worked a bunch of long nights, but that's how she paid for her community college to go to culinary school.
Dang, really?
And, fast forward 2 years, she is now, actually just finished up her last week working at a place called Chef Point, which was featured on like diners, dive-ins, and drives.
Oh, with Guy Fieri? Nice.
Yeah. And so it was a pretty popular spot here, but then she just got a new job at like $2 or $3 more an hour full time to be like a chef at this like brand new hotel and restaurant in West Fort Worth.
Dude, like a fancy restaurant?
Yeah.
Oh, have you eaten
making like $20 an hour, which I think in California money is like 40,
like
42.
Yeah. Like that, yeah. Have you gotten to eat there yet? Is the food bomb or what?
I can't afford where she's working now. So.
You don't get the family discount?
I could barely afford job number 2. But yeah, we're super proud.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that was something she wanted to be doing. That she had a heart for that.
Golly, since sophomore, junior year in high school.
Does she have a certain kind of food she likes to cook the most, or
ramen?
Just ramen.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, that can be good if you go to the right restaurant. I mean, there's fancy kinds of ramen,
She doesn't want to work there.
Okay.
But so everybody always asks me, hey, does she cook at home? And the answer is absolutely not. Sometimes if we're lucky, we get Whattaburger leftovers. So I'm all about that spicy ketchup.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But Whattaburger, Ryan, in case you don't know, that is the rival to In-N-Out here in Texas.
Yes, I did know that. And I've yet to have one. All the times I've been to Texas, I have yet to have a Whattaburger.
Nobody's perfect.
I know. Even me. Well, you've had both. So what do you think? Which one's better? Tell the world right now, which one's better, In-N-Out or Whattaburger?
Yeah. So for its simplicity and consistency of taste, you can't beat In-N-Out. Now, 30 minutes later, Whattaburger still tastes good.
Oh, okay. Like if you don't eat it, you mean you leave it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a big difference in the fries, but it doesn't matter what you have because you're going to be dipping it in Whattaburger spicy ketchup anyway.
Okay.
And so they do have onion rings, which is really nice.
Yeah. See, onion rings are touch and go though. They're either really good or they're really bad, depending on where you get them.
It doesn't matter. You dip it in spicy ketchup and it's going to save your marriage.
It doesn't matter what you're dipping in there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
And they'll give you a chocolate malt that'll, give you diarrhea for days, but it's worth it.
Awesome. Yeah. Totally worth it. Yeah. It's like what Jim Gaffigan says. He does a whole skit on McDonald's. He's like, you ever leave a shakeout for an hour? You realize this isn't even made from milk. It's some kind of chocolate mucus.
Yeah. And Jim Gaffigan gives me hope that a guy with like 5 kids and middle age just gets funnier and funnier over time and can actually thrive in the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. He's awesome. He's hilarious. He's probably my favorite except for Brian Regan. I think Regan is my all-time favorite. And I just got to go see him live in Solvang a couple months ago.
What?
Yeah. It was my first time ever seeing him live. It was awesome. Me and a friend went down there and saw him. It was I don't know if you've been to that outdoor theater in Solvang. It's like,
I think so.
It's kind of small. So it's kind of intimate. They have concerts there and stuff, but they have plays, but it's not real big. So it's like Taylor Swift couldn't play there or something. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, she could, but it would sell out in a second. So, but, well, how about the rest of them? You got 12 other kids, don't you? Besides Kirsty?
Yeah. So, and I was actually just looking up, Nate Bargatze. You got to listen to him. Yeah.
So the guy that my friend Ben is who I went to see Brian Regan with. He recently turned me on to Nathan Bargatze.
Yeah.
And I haven't listened to a whole lot yet. I listened to maybe a half an hour, but yeah, he's funny and he's clean, which is always a plus,
Yeah.
So.
And super like self-deprecating and just life observational humor.
Right.
And if nothing else will convince you to go to Tennessee, it'll be Nate Bargatze.
Is that where he lives?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
nice.
Kids are doing well. So Kirsty, she didn't go to like some big university, and we don't go to a mega church, and so she's not out meeting like tons of people. And so, for her, it's like the first guy who was like really nice to her.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, he's a clean cut guy, right? Doesn't do drugs. They're not like doing merry things.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But Jacob is about ready to graduate.
Okay.
And so he'll be turning 18 at the end of this month.
Woo-wee.
Hopefully he doesn't hear this podcast until January because we'll probably be getting him his own like electric guitar and amp.
Oh, nice. So see, he's still doing music then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, we just took a college tour on Friday to the University of North Texas.
Okay.
And they have a really, really cool like video like editing degree. Like videography, broadcasting, all that. And they have a really, really cool music program. Unfortunately for Jacob, he wants to merge the two together. So he'll probably be going to UT Arlington instead.
Oh, there you go. At least it's still in Texas.
Yeah. It's like 20 minutes away.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's good for Amy too, right? She doesn't want the babies to move too far away from home.
I don't know. You know, we want our kids to find the right program and to do something that's low cost. It's so funny. So, 20 years ago, I preached public school up and down. I went to UCSB, it was neat. A lot of my peers did as well. A lot of my friends went to like UCLA or just like other schools. And I'm like, public school, public college is the way to go. Like, why would you ever waste your money on a private school? Even if it's Christian, if you're a Christian, there's plenty of Christian groups on campus. Why waste your money?
Right.
And, you can get a great education and get plugged into a Christian group, yada, yada, yada. And so I preached that for like 10, 15 years. And then my kids became teenagers. We started getting plugged in with like teen events at our church, and they drive them up to the local Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And we had the president of that university actually come and speak at our men's retreat.
Oh, wow.
Amazing guy. Got a free book. It was cool.
Nice.
And you could see like Bible verses in the dining hall, like just like written on the walls, and just the culture of campus. I'm like, yo, Jacob, go to a Christian school.
Dude,
go to a Bible college. It'll be amazing.
Yes.
He's like, what about the cost? Student loans. You'll pay it off when you're 45.
Yeah. You'll just be in debt forever. That's okay.
It's fine. It's still golly. Okay. So they have other private schools that are really well known, particularly for their football teams in this area, like TCU or Baylor, which are like nominally Christian. So they're not like Bible college. They're not like really Christian schools, but they're pretty well known, mostly for football. And they cost like oodles and oodles of money. Like you have to spend a kidney per semester or something.
And you only have 2 of those.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's why we have a lot of kids. Yeah. So, somebody's going to donate. And then, you go to Southern Nazarene University and you don't have to worry about like out of state tuition and you can apply for scholarships and all the things. And I'm like, Jacob, go there. He's like, nah. I'm like, they have a music editing program. We'll see. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, dude.
Careful what you preach.
when Alora went to Biola, that's where she got her degree from. And she'll even tell that. So in fact, I did an episode with her. I don't know if you listened to that one or not, but she talks about this on there, but she didn't want to go. We went we drove all the way down there for the orientation day, and she was fighting it the whole way. She was grumpy, and to the point where I had to pull her aside and say, look, we drove down here. We're not saying you have to go here. Just be open-minded about it. Give it a chance. Like, we're here. Just let's do the stuff. Let's talk to the people. If you leave here today and you decide, no, that's not where I want to go, fine. We'll respect that decision. Great. Whatever. So then she kind of started listening a little more. And anyway, she ended up going there. And it's great, dude. I love that place. We would go down there to visit, and I would just walk around campus going, I wish I could live here. Like this, I would live here if I could. Can I be the janitor here or something? Can I just kind of just work here and just walk around all day? It's so great.
It's a pretty modern phenomenon though. And depending on your perspective, either getting better or worse, but like, how do you feel? And I'm torn on the issue, but like, how do you feel about Christians like insulating themselves and creating like, their own record labels or their own colleges or their own like, mega churches that are larger than some coastal cities in California? Like,
sure.
Like how do we play with that?
Well, I mean, I think that's different topics. If we talk about Christian record labels versus churches, you know, I mean, I've, as you know, I've never been a fan of mega churches. I think if you have a mega church, and I know this isn't always true straight across the board, but I think for the vast majority, if there's a mega church, it's probably pretty likely that the truth isn't really being preached there, because there just doesn't seem to be that many people that are interested in that. You know what I mean? So if you're like Joel Osteen and you got millions of people in your congregation every Sunday and you're preaching 5 sermons or, you know, 5 different services, I'm like, okay, they're there because you're giving their flesh something that it wants, you know? But as far as Christian record labels, I mean, what's the option? I mean, if you're a Christian band, or I mean, like an outspoken Christian band who puts Jesus in their lyrics a lot and talks a lot about their faith, where are you going to go on a secular label? They're probably going to try to say, hey, it's fine that you guys are Christians, but can you just tone it down a little bit? You know, all this talk about Jesus, we don't like that, you know?
But even with like proximity, you know, or Christians like isolating themselves, you know, away from the world, like where do you stand on that?
Well, Jesus said, be in the world, not of the world. Right. So, I mean, I think it's a fine line. I think, unfortunately, I think what ends up happening with most of our youth, especially today, because of all the push, is that more often than not, our kids become worldly more than they have a Christian impact on the culture. So I think for the most part, unless your kid is so strong in their faith that nothing's going to sway them, and then I would say, yeah, go out into the world and, you know, otherwise, you know, because I mean, you and I both, most of our friends are Christians. We all have families. We're watching them grow up. All of our kids are being exposed to the world in different ways. And we all see the effects of that. You know, we see, you know, I mean, there's things that I'll get into, you know, conversations like with Aiden right now, where he's saying things that are very woke, right? To use a term that all the kids use these days, trying to stay hip. But and I'll just be,
Can we break one?
yeah. But I'll look at him. I'll be like, son, where are you getting that from? Like, where's the proof or the evidence behind that viewpoint? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm open to it, sure, but yeah, you gotta have to convince me, other than just saying, oh, well, I believe this because I heard it on TV, or so and so said, or my friend dealt with this, or it's like all these different things. But but anyway, but before we jump into music, you only gave me you only talked about 2 of your kids. Why don't you give me a little brief rundown of the other ones? The other 12.
Well, you lose track after a while. No. Yeah. And so we have third born, which is we've called her Mary her entire life. She's Mary in our house.
Right.
But since she's the middle child, she wanted to choose her own junior high. So our particular school district has the ability to, choose a junior high school outside your normal zoned area. And once your older brother gets, Red Raider Student of the Year, then, you don't necessarily want to go to that same school. How are you going to live with that?
Right.
So Mary chooses another junior high specifically for the theater program.
Oh, she's following after mom and dad's footsteps.
Yeah, mom. No, but no, she's really like following her own footsteps. And so she chose her own junior high for that. And we're like, well, good for you. Wait a second. There's no bus, but good for you. And
better get her some good sneakers.
This is true. But we like to know when she's coming. So she chose her own high school. She's getting involved in the theater program. She doesn't really like it because it's still like beginning and intro theater, which she learned when she was 10 from the community theater that we were plugged into. And so you learn a lot more from community theater just by being involved as a child or as an adult participant than you can ever do like in school. And I mean, just kind of like the real world, right?
Right.
And so she's there. She's not really liking kind of the cutesy plays that they're doing. And now she's in 9th grade, which in any other school district would be high school.
Right.
And so it's still retained at our junior high, but she's basically in those high school years.
But is that like a middle school, which is like what, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th kind of thing?
So yeah, 7th, 8th, and 9th.
7th, 8th, 9th. Okay.
It's the way they did it. Now it's funny. Sometimes school districts will spin their cause for doing that to say, oh, it's for student development. No. It's just because they can't fit more students at their existing facilities.
Yeah.
But anyway, the ninth graders still get to participate in various high school related things.
Okay.
And so now we're driving her to wrestling. Out of all of the kids.
She's a wrestler?
Right? The 7-year-old included. Out of all of the kids, she would be the last person that I think would be a wrestler.
Well, because she's like real. Every time I've been around her, she's like real, like
she's
not a
wrestler.
No, just like she's very kind of soft spoken. She's like very sweet and nice,
she's not throwing chairs.
Right? Exactly.
She's not like Animal with like the face mask or anything. But she's a full on wrestler, and I think it's because it's middle child syndrome, wanting to do something completely different than the rest of her siblings. I'm like, nuts. Ben, you got stocky body type, you be a wrestler. He's like, no,
Ben's a comedian.
He is.
Ben's got your sense of humor, man. He's destined for stand-up comedy, I think.
Yeah, if he ever regrows his frontal lobe. It was crazy. I had a sweet little 12-year-old up until last March when he turned 13, and maybe because we're not Jewish, like that's the other rite of passage. You know, maybe had he gone through a bar mitzvah, he would have retained some sense of self or maturity or something. But overnight, frontal lobe gone.
Just like that.
No sense of computing. It's all gone. He's a thug. He's just a little thug.
That's awesome.
He chose his own junior high.
Okay.
Like we're testing out every school in the district, apparently. So I'm like, hey, do you want to go to the home campus that Kirsty and Jacob went to? He's like, no, I'm going to do the STEM program. Okay, whatever. So he goes to a different junior high that we have to drive him separately to.
Different than Mary's. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, and it's night and day. So he's a little thug. And it was funny, but
he is funny.
Yeah, he's the only one of my kids so far that's like ever gotten detention for anything.
But see, here's the thing though. He has to live those experiences because it's all going to come into his comedy act later. Right. He's going to be telling those stories like when Seinfeld talks about when he was a kid on Halloween and that kind of stuff. He's, Ben's going to be like, hey, when I was a kid and, I got detention, and it's going to be a comedy act.
Well, and Amy says that he's going to be the one who ends up becoming a pastor. I thought it would be Jacob. I really did. But Jacob's got the heart of like a worship pastor, and he's a little bit more. So, he's a people. He's a little bit like his father, where he has like a different girlfriend every year. But
hopefully that's not still true of his father.
But, no, only of Jacob. So, but the way that Amy, my wife, is progressing and maturing, I mean, it's like, it's fresh. It's great.
Ben,
you
should say that because she's going to listen to this. So you should probably say stuff like that.
I'll just ask my friend Ryan Hester to edit it out. Yeah.
No, you don't edit it out. It's good. It's good for brownie points. You build your wife up on here,
Yeah. I mean, we don't do brownies because we don't live on the West Coast, but brisket, that's more of a thing.
Brisket. Yeah. We have brownies. You have brisket, right? Yeah. That's the comparison.
That's right. If we had brownies, then we wouldn't be able to think straight and shoot. So
well, depending on the kind of brownie, right? You got those special brownies that are out there too. So
like my youngest daughter, Josie, and she's doing fine.
Yeah, there you go. Let's get to the youngest daughter there.
You see how I transition? You like that?
Good job. Good job.
And she is the one that you can tell was born in Texas. So all of my other kids, like to grow their hair out long, and they like hoodies, and they're just chill, like they were born near a coast. It's great. And they all have like similar mentality to each other and to their parents. All great. Josie like came out of the womb with like glitter and spitfire. Like she was Texan. Nice. She's like, look at me. And maybe because of the age gap, or maybe because she's the youngest, whatever.
Yeah.
But
how old is she now?
I'm not even sure. No, she's 7. She's 7. Yeah. And what's really neat though is I think part of her like not listening, or part of her wild temperament or whatever it was, is because she legitimately couldn't hear. And so we got tubes put in her ears, which I was real nervous about. And I think oftentimes you do it younger, like when they're 3 or 4.
Okay. So this is a recent thing you guys did for her?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been night and day, man.
Oh, nice.
She can actually hear the teacher now. She can hear her when we say Josie. When she doesn't turn around, it's just because she's not listening, not because she's not hearing.
Right. She's not paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. But her reading, just night and day. So now she can actually like read. And we were really worried for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it's going fine now. So she can hear.
Nice. Yeah. And you're in Dallas area, right?
Don't say that. Yeah.
Dallas.
We can scrub over. It's Fort Worth.
Well, they always put the two together, right? It's always Dallas, Fort Worth. Is that the same town? It's not the same town, is it?
No, not at all. Fort Worth, my friend.
Why do they do that then?
Is the 15th largest city in the nation. And they call it I'm just being funny, but they call it the DFW Metroplex.
Yeah.
So yes, Dallas is like the more prominent city, just 30 miles to the east, but they're night and day different. Fort Worth is more like Western culture, I guess. Dallas is Dallas.
More like we'll go to city kind of vibe, or is it more like a
in Fort Worth? You mean?
Yeah, like because I think of Dallas, I think like big city. Like I've been to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the bigger cities. I've never been to Houston. And I've never been to San Antonio. Or I just did a podcast with a guy in San Antonio.
Oh, how funny. Yeah.
About a month ago. But yeah, I've never actually been there.
Yeah. So San Antonio and Fort Worth are really, really similar. I think in like vibe.
Okay.
So San Antonio has just a larger like Hispanic Latino population. And you kind of feel that with the culture. Mm-hmm. And a lot of like military and a lot of retirees. So just a little bit different. But San Antonio's got like a really cool like downtown atmosphere. Fort Worth does a little bit, but basically everybody lives in Fort Worth and like drives east to go work in Dallas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Basically. Okay. But yeah, Fort Worth, golly, it almost has 1 million people on its own.
Wow.
And so, it is its own city.
Kind of makes you feel insignificant, doesn't it?
No, my family does that for me. Not too much the city.
Oh man. So
like, who wants to go geocaching? Nobody.
Yes.
maybe
the baby. That was a thing. That was a big thing around here for a while too. I had friends that were doing that.
Feeling insignificant?
No. Caching, however you say it.
Yes. There's no actual cash inside, but sometimes you get McDonald's toys.
Catching geos.
It's awesome.
All right, man. So let's jump into music. I know you like music.
Polka.
We've talked the good. That's good. We'll agree on that. Although I always crack up. We just watched Home Alone. We watch Home Alone every year during the Christmas time, and
we just watched it yesterday.
Yeah, the whole thing with John Candy, where he's like the polka, whatever. Polka. He just gets right home with him.
Yeah. So it was at the church scene. So I'd come in from picking up Ben for some event where he didn't need his frontal lobe. And I'm like, who are those? I've never met those people. Like, who are they? He's like, oh, they're 8th graders. And he's in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And that's a deal, right? I'm like, but there are girls. He's like, yeah. So you didn't tell me that. I took you over to this block party. Oh, what are you guys doing? Nothing.
Yeah. Wow. Ladies man, huh?
No common sense, that boy. No, but he's great. He's great. He's going to end up being a youth leader, which then translates to being senior pastor. That's just how you do.
There you go.
But yeah, so we walked in on the girls all on my bed, like watching Home Alone, and they got into the church scene where they're like just hearing the boys cry or whatever before they pan in on Macaulay Culkin and the scary old dude.
Yeah.
And the church choir was singing. I'm like, oh, Home Alone. Amy's like, how did you know that? I'm like, one, I grew up with this movie. Two, right. Mary loves this movie and it's Christmas time. And what else would you be watching?
Right.
And
Die Hard.
It's Home Alone. That's right.
With the kids, of course.
Yeah. So, like Die Hard or like some like other popular, like Big Bang Theory, like we're not totally up to speed with culture.
Yeah.
You
live in Texas, so I mean,
yeah, we're about 5 years behind. Oh man, but Texas is interesting. Like it is not, it's similar to California, I guess. Like it is not the monolith that you think about. Like people are more conservative here, but it's different. Like we thought, especially Amy, we thought we'd be going into a city of like tumbleweeds and smoking in restaurants, and we just had to live with it for cheaper cost of living.
Right.
I mean, you've been to Austin. Like it's not that at all.
No. No.
And in Texas, you get every sort of person, especially in the cities. Mm-hmm. Houston has a wide variety of people. Dallas and Fort Worth and San Antonio, a wide variety of people. You go out to West Texas, anything on the western half of the state, yeah, it's basically Oregon, but they voted for Trump. So, everybody's in flannel, everybody has a beard,
right,
and everybody has a gun.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Well, that was last time we were there with you guys. That was Austin, right? When we went to because Austin's the capital, correct?
Yeah. And Austin's a funny place, but yeah.
But we went to the Capitol building. Do you remember when we were in the Capitol building and those people broke out in like worship music?
Oh, song. Yeah. It was a peaceful protest in the Capitol, which is really cool because the acoustics are nice.
It was neat, dude. I'd never been around anything like that before. Just the impromptu just came out of nowhere. Just all these people started singing in there.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't like cops were running in and tackling them or they were trying to kick them out or anything. Everybody just kind of stopped and listened.
Yeah. It's because they were on key.
Yeah. They did sounded good. They did sound good. But I kept thinking to myself, if anything like that would have happened in California, they would have maybe got through the first 2-3 lines of the song before somebody would have told them to get out.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess depending on what part of California, of course, but I guess I can't lump all California in there, but all right, man. So let's start with this is the first question I always ask is your earliest.
Oh, you've
memory.
got a list. Yeah,
I do. I have a few questions that just kind of get
check that twice.
But your earliest memory of music, the first time you remember thinking to yourself, this is awesome. I like this song. I like this band. I like whatever. Can you think back to the first time you had that experience?
Yeah, I mean, probably the calm and the chill when my dad stopped tapping on the womb. But in terms of actual like recorded music, golly, I remember bouncing off my mom's furniture, listening to the Thriller album.
Oh, nice.
And I was in the era growing up with Michael Jackson,
nice.
And love it or hate it or make fun of it if you will. But like my kids now know me for listening to Michael Jackson in the car.
Yeah.
Specifically like his disco era, which I didn't grow up listening to,
like the Off the Wall album. And
oh yeah. And even like the late Jackson 5 before that. So good. Oh,
like when they were the Jacksons. Because they were the Jackson 5 when they were like little kids, and then they were young adults. They were the Jacksons, and they had like
because they added Randy. Yeah.
Yeah. And Michael was still a part of it then too. Like, and that's kind of when he was always kind of the breakout star, obviously, even back in the I'll Be There days. But it was, and then it was shortly after that he did Off the Wall, and then that's when it all blew up.
And it's just fun. And so if I want to listen to music where I don't have to think about anything and put me in a pretty pleasant mood and like have a pep in my step when I walk into work, I'm going to put it on Jackson 5, or some sort of Michael Jackson.
Nice, dude.
It's just fun. But then, the kind of the coming of age album, again, for better or for worse, before I got turned on to like Christian music and all that. But Christian music didn't get good for a while.
Right. Right.
But the coming of age album for a lot of us was Green Day's Dookie in 1994.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And only because I realized there comes a certain point when you can't recite the lyrics of a song to your parents without them freaking out.
Right. And that was true of almost every song on Dookie.
Yeah. And then listening to it now, like it'll come on the radio now. Like they have these alt rock stations that play all the songs that we grew up listening to, which is really great because the DJs are all our age.
Yeah.
And so why not? And our kids call it oldies. And I'm like, you're walking home.
Oldies. Yeah. Or classic rock. That's the new classic rock, right? Yeah.
Right. And it's scary, but it's true. Because it is like that Dookie album's almost 30 years old.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they just, oh no, not yet.
Yeah.
Was that 93, 94 that came out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right when
It's
the Lion
nearing
King
it.
came out.
Yeah, well, because I know I'm part of their mailing list, so I recently got an email talking about how the 30th anniversary of that album is coming out
Lion
soon.
King?
No, for Dookie.
Green Day. You're on Green Day's mailing
I'm still
album?
on Green Day. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm
Really?
a huge fan, dude. Green Day is one of my all-time favorite bands.
Huh.
Big time, dude. Big fan.
Okay.
So, I mean, and it started... I mean, I'd be lying if I said it started before Dookie. I wish I was that cool. I wish I was like, oh, I've known him since the Berkeley days and this underground group, you know. But I first heard Longview. That was the first song by Green Day I'd ever heard. You remember the video? Dong, 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 dong. And he's like sitting on the couch, and it's like
you know what that song's about, right?
Oh yes, I sure do. Yes, I knew then, and I still know now. And it's pretty funny. But
such the double standard, like when you become a parent, like Jacob will put on some of his music, which is atrocious in that I don't like the style,
right? Because it sucks. But then that's why.
Yeah,
new music sucks, dude. Most new music sucks. That's just it's just a fact.
I'm like, you're listening to like elevator music, like it all sounds the same. It's mashed potatoes lo-fi. Yeah, some of it's okay. Like we agree on 21 Pilots, and we agree on
that's a good
one. But.
Yeah, it's bad. But yeah, I just remember when I first heard that, I remember being like kind of blown away in a sense, but in a weird way. It's kind of like the first time you watch Napoleon Dynamite. You kind of don't know what to think, but then the next time you watch it, it's like your favorite movie you've ever seen. Like, but the first time you're just trying to figure out like, what am I watching? Is it somebody this is an actual movie somebody made? What is happening? What's the plot? What's going on? You know? So I felt like that with Longview, but then I think the next single they put out, I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it was Welcome to Paradise. And as soon as I heard that with that riff in the beginning, because I had just recently gotten into punk rock. I mean, I was brand new into punk rock, and I know there's a lot of punk rockers that will say Green Day's not punk rock. Why? Because they make billions of dollars doing it. It's still punk rock. Yeah. So back then there was that one, and then it was like Smashed by The Offspring was the big, big album that came out that same year, I think. Yeah. And that was kind of the mainstream punk, like, and then that led into like Blink 182 with Dude Ranch becoming a big, so that's kind of when punk started getting like mainstream success, right? Which only just ticked off all the punkers. MXPX is in the Christian world, for sure. But yeah, I was a huge fan, and then I started getting all their stuff, their 2 albums before Dookie that were out, and then and I've been a fan ever. So I still listen to their new stuff when it comes out. It's still
back when, and there was a point where we got cassette tapes first. And then CDs became real popular. Right. But then CDs were like $25. Yeah. For a popular album.
You remember that? And they used to come in like a big cardboard thing. Do you remember that? Like it was a really long, skinny piece of cardboard, and the bottom 70% of it was just hollow. And then the CD would be in the top part. Like the top 30%.
For display.
Display, or if I don't know if it was like an anti-theft thing, because then later on they started putting them in those like plastic.
Well, the plastic, I remember the plastic. Yeah, like the hard plastic that the guy at the register had to use like wire cutters or bolt cutters or whatever to get that thing off of there before you could take it home. And I never understood until I became an adult. Like I'd go into a Sam Goody or like a music store with my baggy Adidas hoodie at the time. I was like 14, 15, had my hands in my pockets, and I'm just looking around. Yeah. And then they'd follow me. Yeah. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Maybe they really had great customer service.
Yeah. They knew you were trying to steal stuff, dude. So you're trying to steal that new Run DMC album with your Adidas sweatshirt on over there.
Right. Man, oh man. So yeah, I was more of a VH1 pop-up video kid than I ever was MTV.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't allowed to watch MTV when I was a kid. So, and then as I became like a teenager, they kind of started being a little more lax with it. But I remember when it first came out, my parents were like, no way. Because, dude, I don't know if you remember, but like when MTV first came out, like you watched like the first, 10 or so videos. It was almost all like glam rock bands from the 80s, right? And almost every video was like borderline softcore pornography. Like it was always girls in like string bikinis
But Ryan, that was the decade of the 80s.
I know. But it was almost like it was almost like that was the motive. They're like, okay, MTV, we're gonna put out not just music, but naked chicks too. And we're gonna sell it. It's like with all those beer commercials where you have like chicks in bikinis in the snow for some reason. That's gonna sell beer. I don't understand that either, but sex sells, I guess, right?
you know, and it's funny because for some reason I just thought of Carl's Jr. and I'm hungry because we don't have one of those nearby.
Oh, the get all over your face. If it doesn't get all over the face, it doesn't. Yeah. No. How's it go?
I just want the burger now. Yeah. If it doesn't get all over the place, it doesn't belong in your face.
There it is. Yeah. And then they had that one video or that one commercial where the girl was almost like orgasmic when she was eating the burger. And I remember I had mutual friends that literally boycotted Carl's Jr. after that. This is this is into the Christian era of my life. So my friends were all and they're like, I'm not going to get Carl's Jr. burger. I don't get Carl's Jr. too much anymore, to be honest with you, because it's not very good. I used to love Carl's Jr. And the last couple of times I've gone, it's like the bun's like all stale and gross and the burger patty's like flavorless.
And so, I think because young people like aren't choosing to work at fast food places anymore.
Right.
And cutting labor costs. Like I'm in kind of that world now. I've been in retail before, and with cutting labor costs and bad management, if you don't take pride in your work, then things just go downhill real fast.
Yeah. And if there's no incentive to want to take pride in your work, right. That's the whole thing. But anyway, all right. So earliest for you is Michael Jackson. And you said you're still a fan today. You're still a Michael Jackson fan. Would you say?
Oh, heck yeah.
Old stuff. But do you like his whole catalog, or do you just kind of like the early off the wall Thriller?
He started to get like with Dangerous. I remember liking the Dangerous album. Like when it first came out, and probably because it like took over everything.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know, mostly the early stuff, to be honest, like something with just a little more like the poppy, like almost like disco flavor. But a pipe dream would be to go and see the Cirque du Soleil show based on his music in Las Vegas someday.
Yeah. Yeah. We almost did. That was on the list of things to get, but I ended up getting tickets just for the regular Cirque du Soleil one.
Okay.
But then we didn't get to go anyway because my appendix exploded. So we didn't we didn't get to go. So I had to eat those tickets. They were like $400 or something total. It's like, dang it.
Was that harder to swallow like without an appendix, or like how to?
Well, I wasn't really too worried about it at the time because I was in pain.
Like, didn't they have $39 flights from Santa Maria to Vegas at one point?
Yeah, but we drove. Oh. Yeah, we drove. It was for an anniversary trip. Beth and I went.
Cool.
And the first night was great. We went and saw Terry Fader live. That was really cool. He's fantastic. And then the next morning I woke up throwing up, and then I just thought I had food poisoning or something, and it turned out to not be food poisoning. And
golly,
yeah.
Now, was that 20th anniversary for you guys?
20 what?
Was that your 20th anniversary or 15th or something special?
15th.
Okay.
I believe it was the 15th married, 20th together, because we got married on our 5-year anniversary of being together.
Got it.
So yeah, it was for that trip, and it was pretty miserable, and I only got to the hospital because my mom basically made me, after we drove. I spent all night in Vegas just feeling crappy. Drove all the way home the next day. They were totally bummed out that our trip was ruined because of my food poisoning, and and I just had like I had stopped throwing up, but it was like my stomach hurt. Like, when you throw up a lot, you kind of have sore muscles. That's what it felt like. So I was like, okay, I just have sore muscles from all the throwing up. And I came home, lay in my bed, and I'm just not feeling good. My mom's like, you should go to the urgent care. I was like, Mom, I'm fine. I've thrown up all night. I just need some sleep. I need to relax. And she finally convinced me to go. And I went in there, and he did a couple push tests on me and stuff. And he's like, I think it's your appendix. You need to go immediately to the ER. You just give them this paperwork. Don't let them sit you in the waiting room. You need to be seen immediately.
Wow. And
I was like, okay. So I went in, and they got me in there, dude, got me in the little, in the gown on the gurney thing, and the little, 5x5 curtained receptacle in there and on the gurney. And I sat there for 4 hours until the doctor came to see me. 4 hours. So then he comes in, and
no magazine, no nothing,
dude. And he's like, so then they finally wheel me back for the MRI or whatever they call that picture they take. He comes back and he goes, yeah, it's your appendix. And I'm like, I've been sitting here for 4 hours, man. Haven't people died from this before? He's like, yeah. And it has ruptured. We see that it has ruptured. So we need to get you in as soon as possible for surgery. And this is like, I think it's like midnight at this time, 1 a.m., something like that. So they wheeled me back for surgery. And, the deal is if you get it before it ruptures, you're spending maybe in one night in the hospital, so they just monitor you. If you get it after it ruptures, you're in there for a while. I was in there for 6 days because it just spews poison all over your insides is basically what it is. So they have to drain it, and they have to, I'm sure this is really gross. I'm sure all the listeners can be like, "Oh, I'm trying to eat lunch, man." Wow. But yeah,
so it's like eating Carl's Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ironically, the night before in Vegas, I had one of the best burgers I've ever had in my entire life. And then I got to see it all over again the next morning, of course. But when I was eating it, it was really good.
I'm so sorry that happened. Wow. Not the burger part.
Yeah.
I'm jealous about that.
But anyway, I'm not trying to get on a side tangent. So so Michael Jackson was, we hope to go back someday and see that show you're talking about, because it does sound really cool.
So Kirsty with her boyfriend, actually took a trip to Vegas, with his family. Mm-hmm. I've lived in Southern California for most of my life. Never been to Las Vegas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've been on a road trip to Reno to go see Amy's brother, but never been to Las Vegas. Kirsty, when she was then 19, went out to Las Vegas.
And you still have never been there to this day?
No.
All right. Well, here, you just gave me, here's what we're doing, man. Me, you, Bethany, and Amy, we're going to get tickets to go see the Michael Jackson show. We'll all go together. How about that, dude?
For the 20th anniversary of when we met.
Of something. Yeah, we'll make it something. No kids allowed. Just us. We'll go hang out in Vegas.
Yeah. So. Well, that's why you have so many kids, or that's why we have so many, so the olders can watch the little people.
There you go.
Yeah, but nobody wants to watch Josie. It's a nightmare.
Do they struggle with that?
She's needy, but we found an extra screen, so that helps. So
yeah.
Hey Ben, fix the Netflix.
Yeah, okay. That's the best babysitter. That's our parents our parents didn't have that option when they were raising children. They couldn't put their kids in front of the TV.
Yeah, we got vitamin D in the sunshine.
Yeah, playing out in the yard,
The sun stare.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's another Brian Regan thing. What'd you guys do today? We're just out in the yard. We just went out there. We're just out in the yard.
So to be real, I don't know if it's a Texas thing or a generational thing now, because in Texas I don't see anybody outside, because for most of the year it's way too hot, but for a little part of the year it's way too cold.
Yeah,
and when we get the ice storm. For 3 days every year, and then it goes away. You see folks playing out in the snow and the ice and all that, but it's just weird. I remember both Santa Barbara County and then Santa Clara County, all that. People would just be jogging outside. I used to go jogging on my lunch break, just around the park, and you don't really see that anymore here.
Oh no, because of the
weather. We have dog walkers. And that's about it. So I see some cyclists, maybe, sort of, kind of. But that's why I want to keep going outside with my kids and doing geocaching or something now, at a 41-year-old speed. But the kids don't want to do that. So
yeah, it's kind of sad. The technological age has its pluses and minuses, right? So, all right. Well, now as an adult, do you have a specific genre that you kind of hold to the most, or like something you say?
Protestantism.
Protestant. Okay, that's a good genre.
Music.
Yeah, that's a good genre.
No, so trying to think of something clever. So basically, the stuff that I listen to, and it's the alt rock station.
Okay.
Quite frankly, so I was on when we first moved here, I had my 3 weeks or so of listening to country music, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do when you move to Texas. And nobody in a big city listens to country music, nobody.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Even in Texas?
Well, so West Texas, sure.
Okay.
You know, if your population has less than 100,000 people, then sure. Yeah. Country music. You do you, brew. But then we stumbled across like the alternative Christian station, like Radio U style.
Oh yeah.
It was broadcast here.
Yeah.
Until they ran out of money because their listeners, you know, the ones that are going to contribute to anything. So we were on that kick for a while. But yeah, it's mostly, and this is how I bond with Ben on our drive to his junior high, just listening to like the alt rock station.
So this is like old 90s music, and that he likes it, or
it's not old, but we'll scrub that word from the podcast.
It's old. No. Come on, buddy. You got to face reality.
And so it's all the stuff that like was during my high school days.
Okay. Like what? Throw some names at me.
Oh golly, like some Incubus, some like Eve 6.
Okay.
And like old Stained and like those sort of things. So but I
love Stained, dude. Stained's one of my all-time favorites.
Oh yeah.
So good.
I've got a soft spot for like the early millennial grunge.
Yeah.
Not the early 90s grunge. That was a little bit before my time.
Yeah, that's my favorite stuff, but
okay.
Like Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and my brother, who's, 10 years older than me, 10, 12 years older than me, introduced me to Soundgarden.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so that was my junior high years.
Okay.
And that was, and I was in Washington State at the time. So it was like all about that life.
Yeah. They're probably playing like 20 minutes from your house.
Yeah. And that's all the radio stations would play that, and Alice in Chains and all that. And then I moved to California, and then people were, happy. So it was different.
Not as depressed. Yeah.
No. And so it was all about, 3-chord ska songs and presidents of the United States of America. And like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But like there was this band, they only put out one album before they broke up, but We As Human. It's a Christian band. Yeah. But it has,
I've heard of them.
Yeah. They're awesome. They have the same sound as like Chevelle or Stained. Yeah. I'm re-listening now to Stavesacre.
Dude.
So
okay. Good. Okay. Let's talk Stavesacre for a minute.
Okay.
My favorite Stavesacre album is one that most people don't pick. Do you have a favorite album?
So, I've only ever owned, Speakeasy, and that's their commercial success.
That's the one everybody cites as their favorite. Yeah. Speakeasy. Yeah. That's not the one I picked, but.
And then Collective is pretty good. But
that's like the greatest hits album, right? Collective.
I think so. Yeah.
So the one that came out before, Speakeasy was their third release. The one right before it is called Absolutes.
Okay.
That is, to this day, it's probably in my top 10 favorite albums of any genre of all time.
Wow.
And it's mostly because of the lyrics. There are songs on there that hit so deep to me personally. There's a song called Colt 45.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude. There's a song called In Eclipsing, which is great. Sand Dollar, Acquiesce is on that album, which Goaty Hook covered later on as a faster punk rock version off their covers album. But dude, the lyrics on that album are so spiritual and so. That was one of the first Christian bands I ever heard where I felt like they understood Christianity. Like it wasn't just like, Jesus is great. He's my homeboy. He's so awesome. I love him so much. It was like they were talking about struggles and like the deep stuff. And it just hit me right in that heart, dude. And I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are awesome.
Well, and that's why I appreciate now like Trip Lee or Tadashi. Lecrae's is good. He's got a little too much commercial success for my taste now. But like, and they understand the struggle of like today's youth, I think. But yeah, Christian music doesn't have to be watered down and neutered. Like you could still talk about life struggles and have a good sound. And it didn't for the longest time. Like I appreciate what Carman did from like a showmanship standpoint.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how that guy ever got a record label, dude. I'll be honest with you. Bethany saw something the other day with, I think it was a clip from a video, and she sent me the little video clip, and she goes, have you ever heard of this guy? And I was like, oh yeah, Riot. He did that song, R-I-O, was it Righteous?
righteous,
Something
to
of
conform
truth.
to the Bible, invasion,
Yeah.
unarmed attack of truth, the real state of affairs, like a church on the move that will not double
Oh
back
my
from the
gosh!
fight. Yeah, it was
Okay,
the whole thing.
so you're obviously a fan at some point. I'm sorry to rag
grew
on him
up
like
on
that. Yeah, I never saw. He was like a really bad version of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. That's what it reminded me of. And I like Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. They had a couple songs. I mean, they're cheesy as all get out, but
The White MC Hammer. It was fine.
yeah. But I mean, some of those songs like "Good Vibrations," that was a good song. You know, back in the day. I still listen to that sometimes. You're like, oh yeah, come on, feel it, don't. It's like that was like a pump up song, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry to rag on Carman like that.
No, it's, you know, but that's again like an example, right, of Christianity like going into its own bubble and creating its own culture,
right?
Versus, I don't know, like a Creed or a Switchfoot or somebody like, you know, just happens to be in the culture and they are Christians themselves.
Right. Right. It's the difference between being a Christian band and Christians in a band.
Right.
That's always the distinction, where I think Switchfoot is one of those bands that says that about themselves. They're like, no, we're open about our faith. We are definitely Christians. But that doesn't mean every song we write, every album we write is going to say Jesus 12 times in it. Like, you know what I mean? And I appreciate some of the songs that you know, like 21 Pilots. You brought them up a minute ago. Perfect example of this. There's only one song I can think of, and it's off their very first album, where he ever even says the word Jesus. From like Vessel on, those that really understand Christianity and are grounded in God's word, they listen to those albums and they're like, oh my gosh, these are the most Christian lyrics I've ever heard in my entire life. But to the outside world, I'll even tell people, oh, 21 Pilots is a Christian band. They're like, what? Like they have no idea, right? So it's kind of veiled and poetic and hidden, but it's so much deeper that way to me than just being open, like just saying the name or saying, oh, Jesus is great. You know, and Jesus is great. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, that's a little more shallow to me than something like the song Migraine by 21 Pilots, where they're talking about the battle between the mind and the spirit and this struggle all the time of trying to be godly, but the world's attacking us. And it's the whole thing, you know, it's awesome. So anyway, I get excited about stuff and then I start talking about it. So
no, that's good. This is your podcast.
It is. It is my
for you, Ryan.
Yes, that's right. And I've said before multiple times, this is my podcast and I can do whatever I want. So, So when you say alt rock, you're talking like maybe mid to late 90s alternative rock is kind of your favorite all time genre.
Yeah.
Maybe even into the early 2000s.
Yeah. I guess post grunge is maybe the technical term.
Yeah. And I would put something like Stained in kind of that group.
Exactly. Yeah. So like Amy, before she was saved, really got into the band Tool.
Oh yeah. Good one.
And again, like musically or for their sound, it's really good.
Yes.
Really innovative. Yeah. In terms of like the message or just even lifestyle of the members, like not
very
so
dark,
much.
Very dark. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Stavesacre type, where it's mostly like hard rock or like Red.
I love Red. Yeah, I got to see them live once. Were you at that show?
I was. Yeah,
that's right. We went together to that show. That's right. It was like an AG, I think, or something.
And I did not like Disciple because they sounded too peppy, or at least with the set.
That was the same night, right?
Yeah. But Red, like the lead singer, he had his like mascara on.
Yeah.
He got up on like the amp and was like doing his eagle thing.
Yes. I remember that.
But the coolest thing, like you could tell the character of the bands because Red was telling the story of how when they were driving to Podunk, Santa Maria, their van broke down.
Yeah.
And they like didn't have access to all of their equipment. And so they got a ride to the concert and they had to borrow all of Disciple's equipment.
Oh, okay.
And Disciple just said, hey, no problem. Here you go. I'm like, how cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That happens. So
yeah, that doesn't happen in secular bands, I don't think. They're like, hey, we lost our equipment. They're like, well, I guess you're out of luck, buddy.
Well, I don't know, but like I'm not a musician by trade. Like I will sometimes like fill in a 4 count on a drum for the worship band, but like I'm not a musician. So but I can imagine like your instrument is your instrument. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not lending anybody my underwear or my toothbrush. Right?
I would
like
hope not. Hey man, I wouldn't borrow it.
Touche. It's because I don't have a goatee. So, but and like you have your drum set configuration in a certain way, or your guitar, your piece is your piece, and so I think it would be hard to share for a musician, but to have a Disciples band to say, hey, here you go, sure thing.
Yeah,
you better set up.
Do you remember the same thing? So I remember that show as being the only time, still to this day, I believe, the only time I've ever had to put in earplugs at a show because there was something wrong. I don't know music either. There's something wrong with the amp or something wrong with something, to where every time the singer from Disciple would sing loud, it would just go straight in my ear and into my brain and make me want to die. Like it was just this hype. It was like this sound. It was so bad. And at one point I had to walk out of the room, and I'm kind of hanging out over there by the merch table. And I was like the only one out there, of course, because they're rocking out. Everybody's inside for the show. And I'm in there just kind of the merch table. And some lady goes, she was working one of the tables, one of their roadies or something. And she's like, is it too loud in there? And I said, yeah, I've been at tons of shows. I never have this problem. I don't know if it's just I'm getting old or what the deal is. And she goes, oh, here, I have some earplugs. I have extra ones if you want them.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I put those in and I went back in. I was able to enjoy the rest of the show. And I've been to lots of shows after that, and I've never had that problem ever again. So I'm thinking it must have had something to do with something in the sound system, but I seem to be the only person who had to walk out because of it. Like, I mean, you were still in, I think Dave Villaretti was at that show with us, right?
Maybe.
I feel like he was, because
we had the crew. Yeah.
It was the first time I ever heard you say, and this is, you say this all, I use this myself and I got it from you, but you first time you were talking to, Dave was there and he had one of his kids with him. I forgot which one, but not the other one. Mm-hmm. And you had said, oh, where's so-and-so? And he said, oh, he's not into this kind of music. He's like into classical music and stuff. Mm-hmm. And you said, oh yeah, we'll pray for him. And it just came right out of your mouth, like we'll pray for him. And it was just like, I thought that was the funniest thing ever. And to this day, I still say it like all the time. In fact, when I have people over for the podcast to my house, I usually make a bunch of blended chai for us. And I'll say this, I'll take their cup and I'll put a little bit in there and I'll say, go ahead and try that. If you like it, I'll top it off for you. If you don't like it, I'll pray for you. It's like, so I use it all the time. Anyway, so yeah, this is a funny memory I have of that night. But that was a great show. Red's a great band. Disciple's a great band too. I mean, it was hard to hear that night, but
I think I was getting a bit confused because the other concert that we had seen not too long after was like a Matthew West concert.
Yeah, it was Matthew West, Shawn McDonald, and Paul Wright. Right?
I don't know.
Wasn't that in Pismo, I think it was?
So yeah, I didn't go to that one.
Okay. That's the only time I've seen Matthew West.
Not being a Matthew West fan.
Okay.
And his music's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Shawn McDonald's amazing.
Oh, dude. Awesome.
And that was our early adult album together.
Okay.
For me and Amy, that was like kind of the first album that was like ours.
Okay.
Nice.
So. And we saw you guys were already living in, where were you living?
No, we were married.
No. Wait, you guys moved from here to San Jose, right?
And here, like your closet?
Yeah, my closet to San Jose. No, you were in Santa Maria, then San Jose?
Yeah, Santa Maria, Orchid for a spell.
Yeah,
and then
San Jose. And then Texas? No, there was somewhere in between.
It was Texas, yeah.
Okay, then that doesn't make sense because you guys met us. So we went down to somewhere in the LA area, maybe Camarillo area, and we saw Barlowgirl. But you guys were living somewhere near there, I thought, because you met us there. We drove from Santa Maria, and you guys met us there.
We might have been visiting grandparents or something.
Maybe that's what it was. But yeah, you guys were there. You met us there, and we saw Barlowgirl, which was awesome. We have pictures somewhere of the members of Barlowgirl holding Addie when she's like a year old. Yeah. Because she was a baby. We took her with us because she was a baby, and none of my other kids went. But so that was a cool show too. To see Barlowgirl was just like, oh yeah. That's another band.
And they put on a really, really good set.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was fantastic, dude. So good. I still have memories of Million Voices when they did Million Voices.
Oh yeah.
So good, dude.
So
oh my gosh.
I do not mind like a female led or even an all female rock band. Like Garbage has a really cool sound. What it is. Benjamin Gate, I loved.
Ooh, yes.
Loved. And then she had to go get married to Jeremy Camp. Whatever.
Yeah. Her solo stuff was good, but it wasn't the same as like Benjamin Gate was just rocking, you know? Yeah. I almost prefer a female singer sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Well, I married one. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You prefer them more than I do, apparently, because.
Right. She doesn't even need a goatee. So there are no qualifiers.
Oh my gosh. All right, man. So how about this? We got two more before we get into politics, but the first one will be like, what's the most, and this can be a band you've already mentioned or a group you've already mentioned, but the most influential band or artist to you personally, something that's impacted your life beyond just, oh, I like the way that song sounds, or I like that album, but it's like, it actually means something to you beyond that.
Ooh.
It's kind of a hard one.
So it is hard to say. And it really depends on the stage of life. So I mentioned like Green Day's Dookie album. That was a turning point for not being this clean cut, nerdy little Christian kid anymore, but trying to follow the crowd. Right. But in terms of more influence, again, I also bounced off my mom's furniture to the Footloose album.
Ooh, nice. Kenny Loggins.
Yeah. And like still listen to it. We still have it. And then, right when I started getting like Christian albums, like the Newsboys albums were neat. It was basically them, that I'd listened to.
That was like the first kind of Christian band that you really connected with was the Newsboys?
Yeah. And the reason why that was so important, like right in my teenage years, I had like 1 foot in the world and like 1 foot in the church. And I like now being a dad, especially a dad of teens, like I want so desperately for my teens not to play that way.
Right.
I know now it's more than just like the music you listen to, but it's your character and like how connected you are, with the Lord.
Right.
But it at least like gave me a surface level connection to say, oh no, I'm still a Christian, or yes, I need to be a Christian, while I was out like hunting girlfriends at the same time.
Right.
And so it the Lord used that among many things to keep me tethered.
Yeah.
Cool.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Can you throw a couple? Can you throw some favorite Newsboys songs at me?
Oh golly. So I don't really like it anymore, but like back in the 90s, like was it Breakfast Club or like that whole album?
Oh, They Don't Serve Breakfast in Hell.
Yeah. But their earlier stuff, like Shine, or the things that were just like more lyrically fast, like now I resonate with.
Right.
And so again, you talked about impact, like my eyes got open to the idea of Christian hip hop, thanks to the 13 Letters album from 116 Clique.
Which is Lecrae, Tripoli.
Yeah, Tadashi, all that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, their whole crew. And I'm like, what have I been missing my whole life?
Right.
Like, I love Christian hip hop. Now, admittedly, I don't just have time to like listen to a whole lot of anything. Yeah. And they're not playing that on the alt rock station.
Right.
But I love it. And not only just lyrically, but what it can mean for the culture as just something different.
Yeah. So do you have some favorite Christian hip hop artists then? Do you have like a?
Yeah, I appreciate Trip Lee just because of his speed. Okay. But Tedashi's cool. So those are probably my two favorite. Andy Mineo's all right. Like I think like the more popular they are, like the less I like them.
So here's what's funny, dude. Like all the songs that I've heard on the radio that they play the singles like by Andy Mineo. Mm-hmm. I've always been kind of like, it's okay, but it's kind of that East Coast sound of rap that I was never really, even back when I was into hip hop, I was always more of a West Coast kid with like, the G-funk kind of stuff, But I heard some Andy, I was like, not enough for me to want to go out and get an album or whatever. But I was in a thrift store. This is where I get most of my music these days. I was in a thrift store and I saw the Andy Mineo Uncomfortable album. And it was like $1. Yeah. So I'm like, when I see that, I'm like, I'll get it, because if it sucks, it's only $1. That's right. And I started listening to it and I couldn't stop listening to it. And like all the songs and to this day, all the songs that they decided to make singles that they played on the radio off that album are still my least favorite on the album. But there's some great songs on there, dude. Like I couldn't stop listening to it. I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like this is like really good. Like, but the ones they play on the radio is more like it's that kind of rap I don't really like, where it's just rapping, and then just a break of a beat, and then rapping, and then a beat. There's no chorus. There's no female singer over the chorus. Like that's the kind of stuff I like. Well, he's got a bunch of that on the album. They just didn't decide to put those out as singles for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
So
someday, somehow, some way, Amy and I are going to, and I'll have to write it, but Amy and I are going to do a remix of like an Eminem and Rihanna song, but like for church.
Like in the style of, you mean, or you're actually going to remix the song that they did?
I'm going to remix the song. Like I'm going to create new lyrics and I'm going to rap and then she'll sing.
Was it Love You Till the Day I Die, or what was it? What was the name of that song they did together?
I'm not sure. So there was the first Dido one, and we might do that one too.
Stan. Yeah. They did that together. But there's a song that Rihanna and Eminem did together, and I can't remember.
There was like two.
There's more than one. Okay. I've only heard the one.
Yeah. I just remember like, tie me to the post and set the bed sheets on fire. But that song, but just different. So,
right. Okay.
And because Amy's got the vocal chops for it. And
yeah. Well, you're going to have to send me a copy of that when you guys record it, because
eventually. Yeah. Now in your 40s, you're still in like you can create something.
Yeah.
But then once you hit 50, like you might as well be a grandpa, like you're done.
Yeah, I am excited to talk to Amy on here too, because there's a couple of different like worship leaders that I've tried to have on, and for whatever reason it just didn't work out. So I'm excited to talk to like a worship leader, because there are a lot of things that like I'm interested in, like how their minds work as far as, because you're leading a congregation in worship. You have all these different people that worship all these different ways. Yeah. You're probably going to offend somebody somehow by not doing something a certain way. You know what I mean? Like, I guess depending on the church you're in and stuff, but it's always going to be fun to pick somebody's brain like that.
I will say two things for Amy, and it's not her show, but like why I respect her and love her so much, and why her like spiritual wisdom is like exponentially above mine. She will say first and foremost, like she consider herself like a born and bred like worship director. Right? She didn't go to school for it. She just kind of fell into it because she was musically inclined, and she tries to bring a professionalism of music to a small Nazarene church in Hearst, Texas. Right. And so she's just offering what she has, and the Lord's magnifying it. And so that's the first beautiful thing. The second is, even though we grew up in California, Amy does not know Spanish.
Right.
But yet she sings Spanish almost every Sunday. And now our church has Arabic speakers. And so we're throwing in at least one Arabic song, or song in Arabic, which is really cool to hear the worship song Oceans done in 3 different languages.
So she sings in Arabic?
She does not. No, but you're.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, dang. I mean, Spanish is one thing, but shoot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't quite have the guttural yet, but
yeah.
But she will honor those that are in our church. Even if we only have a small handful of Spanish speakers, she wants to incorporate Spanish. Even if we have only a small handful of like Arabic speakers, she wants to, including our pastor, she wants to honor Arabic worship. And she does hymns for that reason, to honor those who grew up with hymns, and that's church for them.
Right.
And I keep thinking, no, like get with the times. Let's actually recruit people. But she does it because church is supposed to be for all.
Yeah.
And there's all types in our particular little church. And so she will do it as long as those people are honored by it. Mm-hmm. And then it makes me think, oh, well, I hope like when I'm 80, some of the youth decide to play Oceans or something like that. Right. Or some alt rock song compared to like some lo-fi song.
Right.
To honor when I'm 80, you know? Because that's how I might worship. And so that's what I'm going to say about Amy. Yeah. So that would be her perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to get her perspective first off.
Touche. She's much more interesting. She is.
But Oceans, that's a Hillsong song, right?
Apparently. I don't know.
I think it's Hillsong United. It's Hillsong something. There's like 14 million different Hillsong groups now. So
yeah. Well, and talking about music, it was interesting. So we moved here to the Hurst, Texas area, snuggled between Fort Worth and Dallas. Mm-hmm. And the first house that we moved into just for rent, as we were checking out the area, the owners of the house had left a Gateway worship CD. Mm. And if you don't know what that is, Gateway's
it's like the gateway drug. It's like the music that gets you into the worship genre.
It's like the church that gets people into Christianity.
Yeah, it's like half worldly, half Christian. So you can kind of get them a little taste and then get them hooked. And then you throw the full worship at them after that.
Yeah, sort of. But no, so yeah, Gateway is this multi-campus, I guess you'd call it a mega church here in this area. And they're really good. I would think they're an example of a mega church doing it right. But anyway, the owners of the house had left this like worship CD, and it was really good. And like now other churches in the area like use their worship to do stuff. But I forgot where I was going with that. But like, so we were on this like, like Elevation or like Gateway like worship kick for a while. But then we started to do research on the lyrics or like what, not Gateway specifically. They're still pretty solid and clean, but
Elevation and even Hillsong and some of the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And now Amy, and again, talk about worship leader perspective, like Amy is very, very serious about it. And even if a song is good musically, she's not going to do it.
Awesome. That's awesome.
It's going to lead the congregation to a weird way.
Yeah.
Even if she can interpret it and can enjoy it on the radio, she's like, I can't do this as a worship song.
Right.
And so she's become much more discerning, I guess we all have, in music choice, which when Jacob puts on one of his favorite like rap songs that he listens to and it's got like the N-word, I'm like, no, like you don't need to be listening to that.
Right. Exactly.
It's not honoring anybody in any culture, in any community.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah. And that's why I tend to like the lyrics in hymns more than the contemporary, even though maybe the sound of contemporary, I might, because I'm newer. I'm not into like, I'm not from the 1800s. I don't like, the old, because I mean, some of them I do, but I mean, as far as the sound, but I feel like the lyrics are more spiritual. They're more biblically accurate. It goes back into what we're talking about, Stavesacre, right? It's deeper. It's 21 Pilots deeper when you get into hymns as opposed to I love Jesus. He's awesome. Just say that 27 times over and over again and the song's over,
I think the popular hymns are like that. Mm-hmm. But we got challenged by some older folks. It's like, well, yeah, you might say that, but those are all the hymns that have just become popular, like Amazing Grace or those things. There are some hymns that are like, oh, fly away, Lord Jesus.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And they're just,
Yeah. Yeah, I think Be Thou My Vision is my all-time favorite hymn. Mm-hmm. I just love that one. Just gets me every time. It's just such a beautiful, the way it sounds, I think it's Irish. I believe it's an Irish hymn. but just the way it sounds, the lyrics are just so moving and just so awesome.
So yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's sung by an Irish singer, like it's going to bring you to tears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like Bono.
Like what?
Like Bono.
Sure. Yeah. Or like the Wellerman song. Like I was playing that nonstop even after it was cool. About that sea shanty life, man. Yeah. I live in Texas.
Yeah. All right, man. So, okay, so we're gonna top.
You're like moving on.
Yeah. Well, we got it for time purposes, but so to top us off, we'll do your 5. You can give me your 5 favorite bands or artists of all time, if you could do it.
The top 4, like Amy Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
Then
you can't use her. She doesn't count.
Well, I learned not to use her as I, got into my 30s and matured more in my faith. I think I'm her token. So top 5. So what do you want? Like bands or albums? Or
no, bands first. Like bands or singers or just something. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It can even be some of the ones you've already mentioned if those fall into that category.
Now is this like Rob Ham's like top 5, just like what I prefer, or like if I had to tell the world, hey, you can listen to nothing else but these 5 bands?
Ooh, that's 2 different questions then, isn't it?
That's why I'm asking to clarify.
Let's go with your favorite. Let's go with your 5 favorite.
Oh, golly. So I don't know if I could rank them. So I'm going to give you 5 that are just floating around.
Yeah, they don't have to be in order.
Yeah. So 13 Letters by 116 Clique, hands down.
So 116 Clique?
Yeah, from Roman, or they call it 116. So
okay. And there's a song. Is that a song or is that an album you just mentioned?
No, yeah. So 13 Letters is an album. I can't believe, dude. Yeah,
I know. YouTube. This is one of the first things you ever told me when we first met, and to this day, I still have not heard this album.
Yeah, we'll pray for you.
Yeah, I know. You should. You absolutely should. I need to check this out. I kick myself every time someone else brings it up. I was like, man, I've been meaning to listen to that for 20 years.
So what's cool about it, especially for nerdy guys like me, but it has, a little bit more than 13 songs, but it takes all of 13 of the Pauline epistles.
Okay.
Which, for those not in the know, like the Apostle Paul wrote a whole lot of the New Testament, and he wrote specific letters to specific churches, and they create different artists as part of this collective, create a rap song out of all of those books. So there's one on Romans, there's one on Timothy, there's one on Titus.
One song is on the whole book of Romans?
Uh-huh. It's amazing.
Dude, that's a huge, if you're doing like Philemon,
they have one there too. Take him back, no matter what it is. Christ forgives. To me, that's what it is. Yeah, that's so good.
Okay, but here's the real question here. This is really the question that matters.
Yeah.
Do they have a song for Hebrews?
No.
So they don't consider Paul to have written Hebrews?
No, because they've done their homework.
Okay. All right. So you don't hold that view either.
According to 116 Clique, a bunch of like rap artists from the Arlen. How can I disagree, man?
I don't hold that view either. I don't think Paul wrote Hebrews, but it seems to be the prominent belief among most Christians I know that he did write Hebrews, but I don't think he did.
It doesn't matter.
It matters, dude. It's the most important thing and the tenet of the Christian faith.
Or a name or something, because he wanted to preach to the Jewish people. It's like he's Texan, but not welcomed in Texas, like Ted Cruz. And so
exactly. All right, so 116 Clique.
Yeah.
Clique. 13 Letters is the album.
Oh, it's so good.
All right.
So good.
And now, could you pick 2 or 3 songs off that album that would stand out as your favorites on there?
Yeah, basically the triply ones on Titus and what was it? I think it was First Timothy was his, I think. Okay. But yeah, Titus for me was the favorite. So just because like lyrically, he's so fast. He's so good.
Okay, cool. So it's not like they're all together on the songs. They each have their own songs.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And there's like, sometimes they'll collab, like you hear like a couple different voices, but most of the time, like it's one artist picks one song It's just a collection. So that
All
one,
right.
I really like my Jackson 5 collection or compilation album.
Okay.
I don't have it, but I wish I did. But Stevie Wonder's I can't even remember, like best album.
Okay.
I put it on like randomly one time when I was trying to put on music when we were all making like care packages during COVID.
Like his greatest hits album, you mean, or?
No, but it's the one that he got famous for.
Is it In Square Circle or Musicarium or?
I forget.
Okay.
But Stevie Wonder,
okay.
And it has a lot of like his best hits on it.
Okay. Yeah, Stevie Wonder is a genius. That guy was an innovator beyond belief.
And I had no idea. My musical worldview was only like this big.
Yeah. Well, I think I only knew I Just Called to Say I Love You. I heard that as a kid growing up.
Oh, yeah.
But then on the Cosby Show, did you ever see the episode of the Cosby Show that he was on? Because like Denise and Theo ended up getting into a car accident with Stevie Wonder's driver, and Stevie Wonder was in the car, and that's how they met him. And then he invited them, the whole family, down to the studio. And Stevie Wonder's got all his set up, and he's like, go ahead and just say something. And one of the kids would say something, and he'd play it back and make it like louder and higher pitch and like all this stuff. Wow. And then he like made a song out of everything that they were saying. It was really cool. So anyway, but then I got into him more later. There was a song he had, I think it was on the Poetic Justice soundtrack, called The End of the Summer, or She Left Me in the Summertime. I forgot the name of the song, but it's beautiful. I mean, it makes you cry. It's such a beautifully written song. But anyway, yeah, I'm a big fan of his now, but I wasn't in his heyday. He's one of those people that way later on, after most people have forgotten the guy existed, I became a fan, so yeah.
Let's see.
Two more. Give me two more.
Oh golly. Depends on the movie. Stain's first album was
first album.
I think We As Human. Or no, their breakout album.
They had Dysfunction, which was not really. I would call Break the Cycle probably their breakout album.
Yeah.
On the Outside, and It's Been a While. Yeah. Okay.
So that's good. But again, I would put like the We As Human album, self-titled, like right up there.
Okay.
Like it's worth a YouTube search. It's pretty good.
Okay. I'll have to look into that for sure.
And again, I'm thinking of albums that I will like listen to nonstop. Like, and the kids would know me for like listening to nothing. I'd put in for like every road trip. The Eve 6 album was good. If only because it reminds me of high school.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Can you give me some songs? Can you give me, start with Jackson 5? Give me like 2 or 3 favorite songs, Jackson 5.
Oh, anything like from the Jacksons.
Okay.
When, like between maybe 1975 and 1978. So like Shake Your Body to the Ground.
Oh yeah. So that's not Jackson 5 then. That's the Jacksons you're talking about, right?
Yeah. I think it's still the Jackson 5 because they might have relabeled themselves after Michael left, but they brought Randy on. So there's a short tour there.
Okay. So the Jacksons. Yeah. That's like Heartbreak Hotel and like some of those songs.
No, I don't know. But, like Can You Feel It, which was like his last recorded song with them.
Yeah.
Like they're just fun. Those are fun songs.
Yeah.
But then like I jam out now to like the Iron Eagle soundtrack.
Nice.
So
nice.
It was featured on like one of the first episodes of Cobra Kai.
Nice.
And Johnny Lawrence is supposed to be in this stupor, just reminiscing about the 80s. And he has it on the TV. It's supposed to be totally ironic. And I see it. I'm like, yes. Wait a second. Why are they trying to tell us?
Right. Oh, that's great, man.
I like the Iron Eagle soundtrack, actually.
Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do,
Yeah.
How about Stained? A couple songs. Throw out a couple songs for me.
Oh, gosh. Like I'm on the outside.
Oh yeah,
I'm looking that's a good one.
That's a great one.
And then, but there was one like it, like, I'd have to get back to you.
Yeah.
So,
My favorite song on that album is Fade. That's the one that says, to us, I just needed someone to talk to.
Oh, yeah.
You
golly.
were just too busy. Yeah, I love that song.
And it's crazy,
So
like what music does to you, because those albums are so old now.
Mm-hmm.
But then you listen to it, it wasn't that long ago. Like, how come they don't play it on the radio all the time?
That's right. You blink a couple times and then you're in your 40s and you're like, dude, that wasn't that long ago, was it? No, it was 20 years ago.
Right.
Like, what? 20 years?
Yeah, and 12 Stones, like that got me through college. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of the Christian equivalent to that
really
stuff.
Yeah. Or like early Cutlass.
Yep. Their first album.
Soft. So, yeah.
Although their
Sea of Faces
album was good too, I think. Yeah, probably. I love their first album. I still listen to it. We saw them live too. I don't know if you were there for that show or not.
No, but
okay.
You're gonna get me on a tangent, so you can end the notes in this. But like Manifest or Paul Rubin, or KJ, like, right? That's what I said. Pee Wee Herman, was
Paul Rubin.
My childhood.
Paul Rubin is not a rapper as far as I know, but yeah, John Rubin was great. He had some great stuff too. Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's jump into some politics. Do you consider yourself to be a political guy, or are you more like, I could care less?
So yeah, pretty neutral. But here's the thing: politics is sports for nerds. That's really what it boils down to.
Could be. Yeah, could be.
And when you can't play anymore, then you start getting into politics. So it's really being in Texas has been really interesting.
I bet,
because you'd think it would be hyper like political, and to some degree it is, but politics merges with Christianity, and that's really weird. Like in California, you can separate the two. Like you can have political views on things and social things, and it doesn't really matter. And then you have your faith. And if you're a Christian, then you mean it in California, right? Because why else would you be Christian in California?
Right.
To a degree, right? It's not popular.
Right.
And then you have views on various things. But like here, and maybe I'm noticing more and more like with the Republican Party in general, but it's really hard to like separate the two. And I think Jesus was apolitical for a reason, right? And so Republicans don't corner the market on Christianity.
No, what are you talking about? I thought Jesus was a white middle-class Republican.
So
isn't that in the Bible?
No, not even when you pronounce it Jesus. Like, so, yeah, I'm not gonna.
But that is a common belief, right? And even when people believe, like people from Texas, they'll the stereotype is that people like anywhere in the Bible Belt, that's just kind of the belief, like almost like Jesus was American, or God, guns, and Bible, or whatever they always say,
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that, but it's if you do your history a little bit, like you saw in the early to mid 1980s, the Republican Party really adopted Christian conservatives into their fold. And so the idea of faith and politics, particularly for Christians, became so intertwined.
And when do you think that happened? When are you saying that happened?
Like with the moral majority in the 80s, maybe late 80s, with like, is it Ralph Reed and that whole like political spectrum? Newt Gingrich kind of came out of that, but he early 90s. And some of it was like during Reagan's time. Some of it was in response to Bill Clinton. And it's like, hey, we really have to get these Christian voters, like get their sect in it. And it became like, hey, you're not Christian unless you're Republican, or vice versa.
Oh, I see what you're saying, where it became to like mesh, like conservatism and Republican kind of became And then liberalism and democratic kind of became synonymous
with like atheism.
Right. Yes. Right. Or at least maybe not atheism, but definitely not religious. Like they might not say there is no God, but they might say, oh yeah, I believe in God and he's, whatever. But I'll go to church. I don't read the Bible. I don't do anything like that,
And that's why, to a degree, I almost like really appreciate conservative pundits or conservative speakers or celebrities even who aren't Christian, but they still value conservative principles. I happen to be conservative, right? But you have like Ben Shapiro, who hangs out with a bunch of Christians on his show. Right. Or like a Milo Yiannopoulos, I think is his name, where like he's gay. I don't think he's like religious or anything, but he's very conservative.
Yes. Like Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin's similar. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's really cool to hear these people talk about conservative principles without having to invoke religion to it.
Yeah.
Because you can argue them differently. And, Texas is like urban Texas, meaning like the cities, Fort Worth, Dallas. Like it's just like anywhere else you go. Like people just largely don't care.
Right.
Politics doesn't affect their daily life.
Okay.
And I heard somebody, a few decades older than me, really wise guy I look up to. He was running for like city council, some years back. And he's like, hey, I'm a Christian. I'm just going to go to all the churches and say, hey, I'm a Christian, vote for the Christian so I can be part of the city council. And so he did that. He visited all the churches. And he's like, I didn't get elected. And I'm like, why? I visited all the churches. Oh, that's right. Christians don't vote. So then on my second go round, I went to all the senior centers and all the retirement homes. And then I got elected by a landslide.
Wow. So that's where you need to go. The old people is where it matters, huh?
That's where the votes are. Yeah. But it's just weird. Like, I don't care who you vote for president.
Right.
Like, I care in some degree. Like, there are going to be policies that more directly impact the issues that I care about. Right. But if you're a Christian, vote your conscience. Yeah. Right. Let's have a discussion about it. But it doesn't make you non-Christian if you vote for the other guy.
Right.
Right. It doesn't make you non-Christian if you either vote for Trump or Biden or somebody else. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's a thing on, I was going to say real quick, there's a guy, Derek Webb. You're a Derek Webb. I know he's getting a lot of bad, and I don't agree with him now where he's at. He's like doing a lot of crazy things. He used to sing for Caveman's Call, and then he went solo. He had a lot of really great solo stuff up until recently when he started like getting into being a drag queen and all kind of stuff. He's basically he's an atheist now. He doesn't believe in any of that anymore. But on one of his albums, I think it was called Mockingbird, at the end of it, he has it's just like a spoken word thing. It's basically him reading a letter that he wrote to Congress or something. And it's really beautiful. It paints out exactly what you're just now saying. Is this the idea that voting or not voting and who to vote for, and like kind of like voting along party lines, which becomes like this whole thing. Like, well, if you're a Christian, you have to vote for the conservative guy.
Right.
Well, what if I think the conservative guy is a bonehead and he doesn't have anything good to say, but I think like in this case, the liberal guy happens to have better policies.
Right.
But a lot of people would hate on you for that. Oh, you can't vote for the liberal. What's the matter with you? He's a Democrat. Hey, man, I wasn't. So anyway, it's really good.
Texas, in a lot of ways, disappoints me because it wants to publicize its conservatism. Like Texas is all in, I'm totally stereotyping, but Texas is all about the spotlight. Similar to a California, New York, right? Sure. We're a big state. We're proud of our state. Let's look what we're doing. And you almost think like Ron DeSantis might as well be from Texas, right?
Yeah.
To put conservative values on display.
Yeah.
But then you look at places like or Kansas or Nebraska, even Oklahoma, still the middle of the country, flyover states, but they're just as conservative. They just don't like make a commercial out of it. you know,
Right.
And they don't use it. They don't like brandish it in people's faces. Like I happen to like our Texas governor.
Is it still Greg Abbott?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. I like it.
But like the lieutenant governor and the attorney general, they're just boneheads. Because they'll just pick a fight for the sake of nothing. Like they'll get really angry over the transgender like bathroom debate. And this was like a couple of years back, right? And like, do I happen to agree with the conservative stance on it? Yes, I do. But sometimes they're just making a mountain out of a molehill just to stir up trouble. And that I don't respect, you know, because that just makes people angry.
So what you're saying is you don't see that as such a huge issue, is what you're saying. Like you agree with the idea that but you believe you're saying you don't think that biological males should be able to go into the bathroom with biological females, but you also don't think it's the end of the world as far as the laws get passed in that area.
Well, I'm saying I don't know if it was an issue to begin with.
Okay.
Until somebody made it an issue, if that makes sense. Right. And so, and on both sides of the political spectrum, like you take like the idea of transgender rights, for example, and it is less than 1% of the population.
Right.
Right. But suddenly it's this huge thing that everybody's talking about.
Right. Why do you think that is?
Politics and power, you know, on both sides of the political stage.
Okay.
And I don't know who started it, but we have a political system, and maybe it's always been like this. I'm not that old, but we have very polarizing politics now, where if one side wants to latch on to an issue, then the other side's gonna swing to the fences the other way for it.
Right.
And so I don't know who started the fight.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I kind of look at it like, what's the gain on either side? Let's say,
right,
if those that are pushing for, what are we going to call it? The bathroom thing. Well, let's leave the bathroom thing. Let's talk about locker rooms. This is something that's happening. I have a friend who literally had to go down to the school board here in Santa Maria over the last couple months because his daughter told him there's a boy that's in the girls' locker room with us. And he went down there and he was like, look, I didn't know you let boys in the girl. And the principal's like, no, I didn't know. We don't do that here. And he's like, well, no, my daughter tells me there's a kid named whatever. Oh, no, that's not his name. Oh, that's not her name. He goes by such and such. She's on our records. She's a female. Right. So I guess my question is in your opinion, those that are pushing that idea that I guess you call them trans girls, right? That's a biological male who identifies as a female. So trans girls being allowed to be in the girls' locker room showering with the other girls. What would be the push behind that? Why would they be trying to get that okay to be accepted across the board?
Yeah, and so that's the thing. I don't blame the student or even the biological male student who might be in the girls' locker room, right? I don't blame this. The student's confused.
Yeah.
Right. Or the student's going through teenage
or he's a genius.
Stuff.
Or he's a genius. I mean, I was a teenage boy once too, you know.
Yeah, I don't. Students confused. And the parents are confused, right? I used to be, again, pretty hard right on the subject. And then I had teenagers and I'm like, okay, you got to find as a father of a teenager and then now like young adults, like you got to find that balance of, you know, love your kid and still raise them and support them, but still guide them. Like it's tough. It's just tough.
But is there a limit to what you support though? Like, can you love your kids without supporting certain things that they want to do?
Oh, absolutely. And
right?
if you've ever been a manager or a supervisor of it,
right.
Anything, like it's the same thing. It's like, hey, I respect you as my employee, but you're messing up.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so, but it's those who want to who have no personal stake in the matter on either. I see it on both sides. And no personal stake in the matter. And they push for supposed rights that are not being taken away. Like I see it with the gun debate as well, right? I don't personally have a stake either way, but it's just weird how, like, you know, arguments will fester and develop. So, I'm grateful that I live in Texas and the school districts in this area don't allow, or separate the two biological genders.
Right.
It's just weird because that's a very, very modern, I mean, unless you want to go back to like the temples in like ancient Rome,
right.
But it's a very modern debate. Like, we weren't dealing with this 20 years ago.
No. And I think that's important to realize. Okay, this is an all new thing. And I understand that something like transgender, or what we used to call them transvestites, right? That used to be the term back in the 80s and 70s when we were younger. I mean, it's obviously something that's always been around, but you mentioned a minute ago that all of a sudden it's on the front lines. It's like the headline news, all these issues, all these lawsuits, all these schools dealing with it. It's in sports, right? You got this whole debate about whether or not Leah Thomas should be swimming with the female swimmers, and and all this stuff is coming out. So it's not so much that it's just now been invented, or just now trans people just popped on the scene 5 years ago. Right. No, they've always been around, but there seems to be more of a push for it in government, in states are battling. You know what I mean? Like it's become a big deal, even though it's still a small percentage of the country, of the population. So why is it such a big deal? You know? So,
and what I don't know, and it's hard to predict whether it's just today's fad, like students protesting the Vietnam War. Like, ooh, that was very taboo.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Right.
And will it just go away? Or will it become normative? Which,
right. That depends on which way these battles are won, right, or lost, right? Because that's why these battles are taking place. That's exactly why. Because the conservative side is saying, no, we cannot continue to. How far is this going to go? Right? Like, most of us on the conservative side aren't saying, oh, we hate the transgenders, we hope they die. Even though a lot of people on the left would claim that that's our view. That's not our view. Our view is like, look, how far are we going to let this go? Like, I don't want biological boys in the locker room. I don't think biological men should be able to compete against women when they're obviously physically way more adept in a lot of ways to, Leah Thomas dominated the women's swimming, like didn't even give him a chance. Like, you know what I mean?
The larger issue is not just the topic or the debate itself, but how we're addressing and handling it. Like, if you were to actually, and again, I don't know the particular athlete, but like, if you were to talk to Leah Thomas, or if you were to talk to, the biologically male student,
right,
that affected your friend or whatever, like, say, hey, okay, you're feeling some sort of way. How do we work out a solution? Like, talk about it like behind closed doors, and don't put it in front of the camera, because that's when everybody just blows up and gets angry with each other.
That's a good point. Very good point.
I took my son to college tour to University of North Texas, and he probably wanted to go in there because it doesn't have the program that he's looking for. Right. But they had a sample dorm room. And on the diagrams of the dorms, they're showing like their different bathroom layouts. And I went to college where it's very much kind of community bathrooms, almost like barrack style. You have like your row of sinks and your row of showers and all the things.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, everybody's got to live through that, right? But colleges are getting fancier now, and they have newer dorms that cost more money. But their
of course,
their bathroom layouts were really interesting. They had like 3 different types. They had like the communal, like military style bathrooms that you're used to seeing. They had more like apartment style bathrooms where maybe like 4 students would share like one bathroom and the doors interconnected.
Yeah.
And then they had what are called like pod bathrooms, where like the showering and the toilets or whatever were private. And then you had like maybe more open concept sinks. And I'm like, for a general public, non-Christian, liberal university, that's a really smart way to try to adapt. to an issue, to make everybody like feel included, because you want the dollars to have as many students as possible come to your college.
Right.
But that's a way to mitigate the issue rather than blowing it up. Fort Worth ISD got into the news, or at least here in Texas, a couple of years back because the lieutenant governor went on a random rant about kind of a similar issue that you just described with your friend. Mm-hmm. And so the lieutenant governor like came to Fort Worth ISD's doorstep and had this big, brouhaha, well, in the midst of an election. So go figure.
Of course. Yeah.
And the superintendent, finally addressed the issue, but he's like, hey, this is about classrooms, not bathrooms. And I agree, because Fort Worth ISD is failing and losing enrollment. But yeah, I mean, let's focus on the attention, what's needed. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but it's interesting. Like, it would have been interesting, like if social media were around 20, 30 years ago, what issues would have been like more widespread then,
Right. Yes. And I think that's an excellent point, because that's kind of the control the media has these days. It's scary in a sense, right? Because they can, in a sense, dictate to America what America is going to think. And that's only because most Americans tend to not look into things for themselves. They don't tend to research. They don't tend to look at facts and, break stuff apart. It's just more like, oh, I heard this on the news, therefore it must be true, or therefore this must be prominent, or therefore this is what's happening, and it's kind of scary, really, to give the media that kind of push, that kind of power, so.
But be careful, like when you say, and I was a communication major, so yeah, but we can't totally vilify the media, because the media has just changed basically since Watergate. Okay. So we used to be able to trust, and we had like the 2 or 3 newscasters on the major, and we had like the 2 or 3 prominent newspapers, and things were pretty even keel. Has there always been a liberal slant to both written and broadcast media? Yes. Mm-hmm. But has there always been a conservative slant to the owners of that media? Oh, yes.
Right.
Right. But what did we see happen? Like CNN came on the scene in like the mid 90s, became really popular, and they weren't always this like gross liberal bastion that they are today.
No, not at all. I think it's changed all so much. Yeah.
And then CNN like leaned a little bit to the left, and then you had Fox News leaning more to the right, and then MSNBC came and really swung left, and so Fox News went even more. And so now we have this like greater marketplace, and you have to be like, and not even us, like our kids have to be very selective of what they listen to.
Right.
And they can't just trust a single, not that we necessarily should have done that anyway, but they can't just trust a single source anymore.
Right.
And I'm thankful that because of kind of open social media like YouTube or other things, like the channels, even something like this, right? Like we can go and easily broadcast our opinions on a podcast.
Right.
And like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire and their group can help balance the scales, so to speak, politically speaking. So there's so much content out there.
Right.
And I know folks who only listen to Fox News.
Yeah.
And I know folks who only get their news from Facebook and like everywhere in between.
Well, yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about like, it seems like people, a vast majority of people tend to kind of have their minds made up. So they kind of look for who's going to agree with them, who's going to tell them what they want to hear, kind of a thing. It's like in high school when you get into a fight with somebody or like an argument.
Right.
And you go and try to find the friend who's going to agree with you, even if you're dead wrong. Even if you're the one that's totally at fault, you want the one that's going to be like, oh man, that girl's this, and I can't believe she this, and boy, I'm right there with you, sister. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be like, oh yeah, I thought so. But you could still be wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So that's this whole thing. So I mean, I think the challenge now for us, and especially for our kids, because I think our kids are the ones that are getting bombarded. Because in my mind, there's an obvious push towards indoctrination of our youth, and I think but the challenge now is to somehow, I don't even know how to do it, but somehow see through the bias, see through the agenda, from both sides. Like you mentioned Daily Wire. I love Daily Wire. I love Ben Shapiro. Matt Walsh is like my favorite of all time. He's fantastic. I like Candace Owens. I like all of them. But the reality of it is everybody has a bent, right? Like Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, they're conservative minded. So they're going to be viewing the world through a certain kind of lens. And even on this show, when I've had people, and I've described it in different ways, but it becomes very apparent to me, even if somebody says, oh, I don't hold to Republican, Democrat, right, left, any of that. I get talking to them for about 20 minutes. I can tell them which side they fall on. Right? I can say, you lean right, you lean left, just based on a couple of main issues. Because, and you can't really fault either side because it's a mindset, right? It's a way that they view. We're looking at the same evidence, the same facts, the same news story, and we're walking away with two completely different outlooks on it because of our mindsets. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, the main difference, though, I think between us and maybe our parents' generation is that, like in our parents' generation, there were different political mindsets, like where you stood with the war, where you stood with economics, where you stood with like social principles, all the things, all the normal things. But there was almost like this, maybe I'm not, it's like Christian veneer, over America. And we've become such a post-Christian world now. Right. And so you really have to get your Christian worldview set. Yes. And then begin working on your, political worldview. Yeah. Is.
Well, for sure. And that's kind of what I'm saying. So like, why do you think that is? Why do you think as we sit today, kind of that Christian kind of bubble in a sense? I mean, obviously there's always been all kinds of beliefs in our country since day one. That was the whole point, the freedom of religion, right? You're allowed to believe whatever you want to believe. But why over the last 10, 20, 30 years has it become, like you just said, a post-Christian country? Like what caused that, do you think?
And I'm not going to blame it on an influx of different religions.
Okay.
I heard John MacArthur argue, or not argue, but just like talk to Ben Shapiro one time.
Oh, I heard that one too.
Yeah.
That was a great episode. Yeah.
Ben Shapiro would ask, hey, would you ever, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but he'd say, hey, would you ever vote for somebody who's Muslim to, be president of the United States?
Right.
And John MacArthur said, well, if he aligns with my political values,
right.
Sure. And if that were the only option, like I'm not electing the Pope.
Right.
And somebody like a Muslim is going to be much more aligned with me for like sanctity of human life and protection of marriage and like other things that he said he aligns with than somebody else. And so I has that caused, just a greater influx and acceptance of other world religions? Has that perhaps caused a watered down Christianity? Maybe, but I don't blame that. I just blame not paying attention to God in general.
Okay.
Right. And not having just any sense that there's one true God and he has a plan for all of us and he has guidelines set out that are in our best interest and they're not comfortable at times.
Yeah. But are you saying then that you got our generation, guys that are in their 40s. I'm glad that you qualify for that. Now I can call you in your 40s. you were always you guys were always the younger friends that we had. But now that we're guys in our 40s, like you say, just take the Christian population. You're not saying that like those that have been Christians for 20 years now or so are starting to not focus on God, right? What you're saying is like as the generations go on, like there's less and less Christians in those generations. Like our kids, there's going to be less. And then our kids, there's going to be less Christians.
Yeah. So short answer, yes.
Okay.
And you'll always have, a whole spectrum within Christianity. I was really blessed, to come to Texas and kind of move into a community where there are a whole lot of like Egyptians that have moved in. And the Egyptians that are here in Texas that have moved from Egypt are predominantly Orthodox. There's some Protestants, there's some Muslims, but they're predominantly Orthodox, which is basically the Eastern or the Arab equivalent of Catholicism.
Okay.
And so, and I knew nothing about it until I started to dig in more. They're basically, and if I had somebody Orthodox sitting next to me, they'd very quickly correct me. But as I understand it, it is the Catholic equivalent, but for an Eastern culture, or for even like a Middle Eastern culture. Mm-hmm. And so they have their own Pope, but they don't, they don't follow the Vatican Pope or the Vatican rule. But they're very like liturgical and all that, but they still believe in Jesus and have their own customs. But that showed me that, it helped show me, there can still be people who hold on to traditional beliefs and values, but don't know Jesus very well and aren't following Jesus, And then I was so grateful to kind of rise up in my early adult years in like our Calvary Chapel community, where we were all about, jeans and being poor and loving Jesus, right? And just growing.
Yeah.
It was great. So I don't know how politics kind of fell into this, but
that's all politics as far as I'm concerned. For sure.
At least in Texas, it's hard to separate the two, whether you like it or not.
Right.
And now with the topics that are being discussed, it's less about economic theory, right? Right. It's less about, where should funding go, which, or even like, should we go to war or not? But there are some like real, like faith striking issues that have become front and center.
Yeah. Like what?
Golly.
So what would you put in that category?
So here's what's interesting. Like the transgender rights debate, the abortion debate, which tends to resurface every few years or so.
Which one? You kind of cut off there. So the transgender rights debate.
Yeah. And then like the abortion debate.
Oh, abortion. Okay. Gotcha.
Particularly here in Texas.
Yeah.
And I think those are the hot button ones. Gun laws, every time that there's a school shooting, those tend to come up again. That's not necessarily a faith debate.
But it becomes one, right? Like I said, kind of the stereotype is all the conservatives believe in Second Amendment rights.
Right.
Right.
But it's not a Christian issue.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
But you talk to folks in our church and they're like, oh no, it's absolutely a Christian issue.
Right.
I'm like, how is that? Right.
Yeah. Well, because people have put together the American freedoms with Christianity, like they've been melded together.
Right. Right. And I would argue the United States is not a Christian nation today. It is a nation full of Christians. It is not a Christian nation today. And I don't know if it ever was.
I agree.
In the sense as we might think about it or wish it to be today. Right. Did it have loose Christian values? Sure. And is it the closest thing to a Christian nation outside of the Vatican?
Right.
That we might
even that's debatable.
Yeah. But our government and or more so our nation is blessed not because of our Constitution, but because of the Christians inside and others, right? But the Christians inside the country praying for the nation. And so we're sustained by the people, not necessarily the laws that we create, because the law can change. And we've had some laws that are, against God's will and at certain points of our history.
Sure. So. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the gun debate, just because you live in Texas, so you guys have different laws there than we have in California. So what do you guys have? Open carry, concealed carry? What do you have there?
Yeah, pretty much all sort of carry.
Okay. You walk into Walmart with the bazooka on your shoulder, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, am I freaking out? Yeah. And again, like in Texas is funny. If you're in a big city, people are going to hold different views than like rural Texas. And again, that's really like if you draw a vertical line down the state, and again, you've been to Texas, it's called like I-35. It splits with Fort Worth and Dallas, but like that that highway, I-35, interstate highway, it goes through Fort Worth and Dallas, goes through Austin, goes all the way down to San Antonio. West of that, basically, is rural Texas, and there you just see cowboys, right?
That's what cowboys and Indians are.
Well, we don't call them Indians anymore, right? We call them citizens of Oklahoma.
I'm sorry, that was not PC of me. I apologize. That was very wrong.
But no, that's basically that whole part of the country were wiped out with influenza. But yeah, all the that's where the Bush W lives,
Okay.
and I have friends who played golf with W.
Really?
Oh yeah, and in his libraries nearby and all that. Awesome. So yeah, it's God's country, all out there.
So, but how do you feel about that?
Oh, so guns, yeah.
So you're living in California for as long as you did,
yeah,
and then now living in Texas, where the laws with guns are obviously night and day different.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I'm torn, right? So we have friends who love to go hunting, and they have all sorts of different firearms to go hunting, and they only use it for hunting, and that's fine.
Yep.
And even in San Luis Obispo, when I lived in coastal California, I knew of, it was more rare, but I knew of some families who liked hunting.
Yeah, sure.
Or who had their own shotguns or whatever, right? Yeah. And my brother-in-law was into that for a little while. So it's not a hunting debate. And you look at inner cities now, not so much Dallas and Fort Worth, maybe some in Houston, but the Texas major cities don't have it as bad as Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, where they are rife with handgun violence.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about taking guns away? Hey, start with the, they might be small. They might only be killing one person at a time, but start taking how do you clean up your cities with handgun and gang violence, right?
Which is an interesting take, because a lot of people that are anti-gun would say the first step is the AR-15s and the ones with high capacity magazines and that kind of stuff. You don't really hear somebody say what you just said. Start with the pistols.
Yeah. Yes. Start with the pistols. No, but so I'm torn because again, I've got kids who are junior high school.
Right.
And do I ever want to be a statistic? No,
you don't.
And it happened in a Texas school. I never thought it would happen in Texas. I'm yeah, we've got guns everywhere. We're a Christian state.
Right.
You're going to leave Texas alone. Let's leave those to the other godless states. And I understand if it happens in other places, but it happened in Uvalde, Texas, this little rural, predominantly Hispanic Latino community.
That was brutal. That was
horrible.
Yeah.
And I think that's what finally got me to say, okay, what are we doing? Now, because of that, Texas passed a law, and they're still working on it, but to try to get officers in every school.
Armed?
Like police officers.
Gotcha.
From the local, whether it's county sheriff or police department, stationed at the school. That would have helped in Uvalde's case. They just had lax practices. But children died, because somebody got their hands on a high caliber weapon. Now, here's where Amy and I are going to disagree. She's going to have a field day and answer very conservatively.
Well, this topic might not even come up when I talk to her. Who knows?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Politics in general. Yeah. But and we'll have debates in our bedroom, which does not help for romantic time at all. At all.
You got to wait till after. Then you bring up stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know now. Never guess at that ever. Thank you, Brian. And so, but so it's funny. My wife and I are different. She tends to take on the political values of where she lives, and I tend to skew the opposite. So when we were in California, I was very conservative. I was like Michael J. Fox on Family Ties. Like I was.
Oh, nice.
I was a young Reagan Republican. Very conservative.
Yeah.
And though I just didn't have any money, so counter that. And Amy, at least in the high school, in college, like she was more liberal, like free Tibet and weed should be legal everywhere and all the things, right? And then we move here to Texas, buckle of the Bible Belt, and I drive around like inner city Fort Worth, parts to Dallas. I see some interesting social divides, and I become. Now I'm still conservative, right? But I become a little bit like more left leaning. And Amy becomes way more right leaning. And she's like, I think we should buy some guns. Do we need guns? No, I just want to. Okay, let's go out shooting. So that was our anniversary one day. Just, shooting and wine tasting. So
now it's funny to me. That's why I'm laughing. I just had this picture of because Amy's not like this huge woman.
No.
Right. She's like this little tiny little thing. And just to see her like brandishing like a shotgun or something at some intruder who's coming into your house,
she would love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Point right at his midsection.
Yeah. But so she sees the value in it now, but which is interesting because like you go up to a place like Indiana and I'm stereotyping here, but maybe Kentucky or again, Nebraska or Kansas. And they're just as conservative, but are they as gun friendly or as gun, I don't know, addicted? I don't know. Gun loving. No. And so it has nothing to do with hunting. Like hunters are going to be doing their thing and they have always there's nothing to do with hunting. And the Second Amendment, when people bring that up, even doesn't have to do with hunting or even self-protection. I heard one conservative pundit say this. It has everything to do with the government not intruding on your right to come and take away your weapons against the government.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, that's why the amendment was put in to begin with, was to protect us from a tyrannical government. Right. Yeah.
And I get a little bit scared sometimes. Like, is my child's suburban school going to be next?
Well, but let's talk about that for a second though. Like obviously those school shootings are horrendous and I can't even imagine being the parents that are dealing with that kind of thing. In Uvalde, or you look back to like Sandy Hook or something. I mean, some of the just horrible things, churches that have been crazy people going to churches and just kill everybody in the church or whatever. And I think that could be me. That could be me and my family. I mean, who knows, right? So obviously I don't think anybody on either side of the gun debate wants that ever, right? I think where the differing is how do we stop this from happening? And the anti-gun people would say, well, get rid of all the guns, because that guy couldn't have gone in there and shot all those kids if he didn't have a gun to do it with, right? That sounds logical on the surface.
Right.
But then the other side of that is when you look at states that are, tend to have more, but like you said, Texas is very open with guns and the whole deal, and it happened in Texas. But you also hear a lot of stories about people almost being able to commit something like that, and then an armed citizen taking the gunman out before he's able to kill any kids, So I mean, then there's that side of it. So I mean, it's like, where do you stand on that? Like, are you on the remove all the guns kind of side, or?
No. And you really want to fix it, then you create a society like the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report.
Oh yeah.
And you're locking up people with any ounce of mental health issue ever.
Yeah.
Like,
which would be
you really want to
of
fix
us.
it. That's what you do.
That'd be everybody.
That's right. Yeah. So that's not a practical solution.
Right.
And the more you lean towards that, they are starting to lock up Christians.
Yeah.
And so I am all about freedom of everything, because like Christianity will not be even in Texas someday. Christianity will not be popular.
Right.
And I don't want my grandkids to be locked up for their beliefs.
That's an excellent point.
You have to have. Yeah.
That really is an excellent point, because to some people, Christians might be considered mentally ill. So if we start locking up the mentally ill, Christians might be on the top of the list.
Yeah. Now, I think one of the common factors with any sort of, I don't know enough about like inner city gang violence to see if this qualifies, but maybe it's true. But I think the profile of the shooters that we've seen for more what they might term mass gun violence, where there's like 4 or more deaths, typically including a suicide, is that the shooters have zero sense of community.
Yeah.
They don't have a best friend. And regardless of parents, right? They may have like supportive parents, but they have no friend group. They have no social activities. They were loners. That's where the church can step in. People have fallen away from the church, and the church has fallen away from people. Like it's a two-sided issue there. But just being plugged into a church, you don't hear about even nominal Christians going up and shooting up a school or a movie theater or, a nightclub.
Yeah. But do you see that as kind of the fix though? Like if, let's say you knew a guy, let's just say this is just a hypothetical scenario. Let's say you met somebody and he says, "Hey man, I got no friends. I'm just really angry at the world. And I'm thinking I might go shoot up a school." Now, obviously, you'll probably call the cops, but let's just say that he's like, let's say if you, in this scenario, you didn't have that option, right? And let's say you say, you know what, man, here's what I want you to do. I want you to come to church with me on Sunday, right? Might be a good thing, maybe, but like just walking into that church building and let's say, here's the gospel. I mean, by all means, the Lord could do anything. The Lord could use that and just the guy could get saved on the spot. His whole life's changed. He's a brand new creation. There you go. But I think for a lot of these people, the reason they're not in church to begin with is because they have no interest in it, like to begin with.
Or they weren't invited, right?
Or that too. Yes, that's possible also.
So we need to be the church. Now if somebody tells you, I'm going to go shoot up a public space, like, you not only call the authorities, but you seek to get them some mental help, right? And it doesn't have to be Christian mental help. Like you get them
something,
get them help, right? From a trained psychologist or psychiatrist, medicate the person, like do whatever it takes, and take their guns away. But before it gets to that point, like, hey, I don't know anybody or don't have any sense of community or whatever it is, particularly for young males. Right. And again, the profile, like it's not middle-aged. We've lost our libido and our zeal for life. Like we're too old for that stage. And it's
just given up at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll just ask our wives, whatever. Should I go shoot something today? No, I've hidden the guns from you. You do the dishes before you go out hunting again. Yes, ma'am. Right. So it's not middle-aged guys, and it's not women by and large, who are committing these acts, right? Women aren't prone to sin or violence in that way, according to Jordan Peterson. But so it's young males, and again, sense of community, like find something. And so our church, the church has to be a little bit more active in like reaching out to people who have no sense of community. And it's a both and not just to say like, oh, drag them to your nearest place of worship. No, just hang out with people.
Yeah. Have lunch with them, talk to them, get to know them. Yeah.
Serve and I love, the way that like Ryan Hester would talk about this scenario, but like, Jesus fed over 5,000 people, 5,000 men plus women and children. Right. And then after lunch, they all left. They didn't want to stay for the gospel. But
hey, that's not my spin. That's what the Bible says.
Touche. But he cared enough to feed them. Like, he met a need.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the more liberal in me talking, but that's part of the issue. But what does our government do? Like go in circles, talking about the gun debate. The gun's a symptom. It's not the root of the problem.
Right. I'm with you.
And we don't want to spend money or time or energy talking about the root of the problem because it doesn't get votes.
Right.
It's not sexy.
Right.
Mental health is not, is not popular. It's not clickbait.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think a lot of good Christian work, it happens behind the scenes where you don't have to get the spotlight on it. So.
Right. Yeah. try and write something down quick here.
So, and yeah, I think you'd have both liberals and conservatives being able to agree, at least largely, on that issue. You know, we believe that there's power in the gospel, there's power in the Holy Spirit, there's power of a church community.
Right.
But hey, if my atheist friend who was very democratic leaning said, "Hey, I have this solution," cool, right? And it doesn't involve.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm with you to a certain degree. But I mean, there's I forgot where that was. I don't think it was Texas. Dylan Roof? Is that his name? Dylan Roof?
I don't know.
I might be getting his name wrong, and I don't remember where it was, but it was in the last, 10 years at least. It was a kid. He's a white kid, had some mental problems, went into a predominantly black church and shot a bunch of people. And I believe he didn't kill himself, and he wasn't killed. I believe he was apprehended by the police, and I believe he's in jail. And I think in one of the interviews he did, he talked about how nice and welcoming all the people were in the church and how they treated him very nicely. And I forgot his exact quotes, but it was pretty interesting to hear him talk like that about these people that he murdered right after he was feeling that way about them. And I'm like, so I guess what I'm saying with that is, I think in theory, what you're saying is awesome. And if that's the way that it would work out, yes, I agree with it. Everybody needs Jesus, right? And I think that we have a lot of mental health problems in the world. We have a lot of mental illness. We have a lot of loneliness and anger and bitterness because of loneliness. We have a lot of broken homes that kids are coming out of. There's a lot of disturbed people in our country, and it's either because of trauma of some sort or trauma that pushed them to drug use, and now the drugs have messed up their minds. There's all these issues going on, and I feel like in a perfect world, yes, just get some Jesus in them, and they'll straighten right up, right, kind of thing. But unfortunately, that's just not the reality. And I think there is a time and a place to have to use force, and I think you would agree with this, use force to take out somebody who is attempting to hurt other people.
Yeah, but that's in the moment. Like, what do you do? That's in the moment. 2 years before.
Right. But a lot of times you don't know. Like that's why you hear they talk to the neighbors of this guy. Man, I can't believe he did that. He was the most nice guy. I'd see him taking his trash out, getting hey, Bill, how's it going? Oh, hey, how's it going? That's fantastic. And then you see him on the news and he killed 30 people. You're like, whoa, what happened?
Exactly. And so it is hard to measure prevention, but we know it works. Yeah. Right. Like I've been in the nonprofit after school space for 16 years. And I now work for a tutoring company, which largely, if you look at it, have a similar mission. It's helping, children grow into successful, thriving adults.
Right.
And it's hard to measure prevention. Used to work for the YMCA for many years, and they're a philanthropic agency, and they do fundraisers and campaigns for all sorts of things. And they want people to give to the YMCA to help out with programs. Great. But what does the YMCA measure? Right. Well, we're helping, fight youth obesity in this way. Great. Or we're helping swim lessons this way, which is especially important in Texas and Tarrant County in particular. Great. We're helping with after school programs this way. Well, why should I give to an after school program? Well, because we're giving kids a safe space. Well, so what? Well, so that in 10 years, like Chris Rock said, they don't grow up to rob you.
Right. Yes.
But it's hard to measure prevention because that child is going to grow up and not commit a crime.
Right.
What we've seen in Fort Worth is that in the mid 90s, and this is why the citizens of Fort Worth continued to kind of renew on a political ballot more funding for the police department. Because some of it went to after school programs and other crime prevention. But in the mid 90s, they were starting to look like Los Angeles. They had a big problem with crime.
Right.
And they said, we got to fix this. And so they passed a community-wide initiative for extra police funding. And the extra police funding, went to more officers, school resource officers, better cars, toys, all the things. But it also went into prevention programs, gang intervention programs, after-school programs, all the things. And so they started to see, right up until COVID, this huge exponential drop in crime because of increased police funding. Basically, and in the community saying enough is enough, and it worked. And then COVID happened, more isolation, things just got kind of weird.
Which is funny though, because there's a lot of people that would say less cops, right? Less cops means less crime, which I don't understand that logic at all.
No, and that's I'm gonna speak way over my skis here, but that's it's white liberal pundits or white liberal activists saying those things.
Right.
Like you ask the communities that are directly affected by it, they're like, no, we still need police officers. Right. We need them to be well trained, and we need them to respect our communities. And I have seen when that happens, and I have seen when that doesn't happen. Right. We had an issue here in Fort Worth where a rogue officer crept around somebody's window and shot somebody when they were playing a video game.
Why?
Because they were not a good officer.
Oh, they were just wackadoodle, and they're trying to kill this guy.
No, well, I think Atiana Jefferson case. But they got a call for suspicious activity. And their officer was prowling around the residence rather than just going up and knocking on the door.
Okay.
He's prowling around the residence, and I think the owner of the residence, because it's Texas, had a handgun. Officer saw that from the window and shot through the window. And
it was a video game gun.
No, there was just sitting there playing video games, just minding their own business. And it was this young, black female, just minding her own business.
Yeah.
And just this random officer who was not following policy or protocol.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, you have officers who aren't trained well and who aren't supervised well, and it causes bad things.
Right.
But then you also have really good officers who do their job really, really well.
Right.
And the more accountability, the more training, things you have, like it makes it better, not worse.
Sure.
New York City got cleaned up. It's not perfect, but got more cleaned up when they had more police officers. Right. Like it or hate it. Like it is what it is.
Well, it seems to be that those that are breaking laws are those that hate the police the most. Right. Like you listen to a song like F the Police by NWA back in the day. Right. And you listen to it and you think, well, why do you hate the cops so much? Oh, because they're telling you can't do this and you can't do that, and I'm definitely not trying to get into that side of the debate. But like what you just said reminded me of the view lately, probably ever since like maybe George Floyd or some of these other police. That wasn't a shooting, but, police. I don't even know what to call it at this point. Officer involved deaths, right? Like people dying when they're from police officers. This idea that cops should be trained more in mental health issues and less in weapons training. And the reason they say that is because there's a lot of these instances where somebody's suffering from mental health and he ends up getting shot and killed, to where I'm like, yes. But I mean, the way I view it is the cop's job is to eliminate the threat. I'm not saying he should show up and try to kill people whenever he can. I don't think that's most cops' job. I don't think they go home that night and have dinner. Oh, I got to kill somebody today, honey. It was great.
Right.
No, he's probably traumatized. He's like, oh my gosh, it was terrible. Like I didn't want to take this guy out, but I didn't really have a choice. He was about to do something I didn't know, and that kind of thing. But I mean, I think preventative, like mental health care, needs to happen. But how's it going to happen when a guy's in a shopping mall with an Uzi and he's getting ready to shoot up all these stores? The cop shows up. What's he supposed to say? Excuse me, sir. Can we do a mental health evaluation? Can we please talk to you about what's making you so angry, sir? Can we please talk about this? Let's help you. I think at that point, if you can eliminate the threat without killing the guy, fantastic. Take him out in a point where you can cuff him, get the gun away from him. He cannot hurt people. Then get him into a mental facility and hopefully get him some help.
Yeah,
right?
but that's all a post-incident argument.
Yeah.
Right. I had the privilege, even though I washed out on week 19 out of 20, but I had the privilege of going through.
You're almost there. Academy. You almost made it.
I was this close. So yeah, the people who did really well in the police academy, I'll tell you right, the people who did really well were former military because they could already march and take orders and not whine. And like just cowboys.
Yeah.
Just people who were cool, like drinking a lot, driving fast, not in that order. You know,
I would hope not.
And shooting. And so, you know, the boys from Lompoc and the boys from Atascadero, like that made up the academy. But you know, you learn in the academy, at the end of the day, as an officer, you want to go home to your own family, and you want to do what you can now. But the work starts in the morning. Now, no real officer likes the morning shift because it's boring and it's so much paperwork, and you're helping grandmas and you're calling code twos when like a 13-year-old falls off his skateboard, and it's all that. But the real work happens in the morning. I'll bet you none of the 4 officers involved with the George Floyd situation knew who I mean, granted, it's a big city. You're not gonna know everybody, but like they were all at least 3 of them, like brand new, like to the force. Did they know their community? And I think the George Floyd situation happened in the morning, ironically. But the more community policing that you do in the morning, it makes your evenings more safe. And if you know your community in the morning, you're going to know your community in the evening. So yeah, it's a tough issue, but I really appreciated the way that Fort Worth and Dallas handled those protests. Like it didn't devolve into chaos. Well, Chaz, you know,
right.
You know, those areas like Portland or Seattle, they allowed the protesters. And the officer even saw some hugging, right? Wow. Police chief was out there, and they said, "Okay, now it's curfew. You need to go home." No, we're serious. You need to go home. We will tear gas you. Go home.
Yeah.
And then they did. Right?
Did you say Kirsty was out there for that?
No, the police chief.
Oh, I thought you said Kirsty was out there. I was like, what?
No. I'm sorry. No, the tear gas. It's funny. The director of HR at the time was out there. I'm like,
yeah, that's not good for the optics.
It's fun. Like again, moving to Texas, much larger, you know, Black population than you have certainly on the central coast of California, or at least Santa Barbara County. And you hear folks who are like Black folks who are older than I am, you know, they go to like small churches and all that. And it's like, you know, some pastors will be out there and they just want to stir the pot. And it's like, hey, Black community, you got to do this and that. But then our pastor's like, no, you don't need to be protesting. Just serve people.
Yeah.
Get here for the Saturday soup kitchen. Just mind your business. Right.
Yeah.
Like keep your nose down, be a Christian, don't be of the world. And like that's what we're called to not make waves. And it's hard to do that in California, Texas, and New York.
Right.
So
I don't know. Do you think though that do you think that's true? Like we're not called to make waves, quote unquote? I mean, Jesus made waves.
But not in the sense that everybody was hoping for. You know,
well, maybe not, but I mean, he did. I mean, he told people the truth, even when it meant that they were going to want to kill him. Right. I mean, they hated him. They were up in arms. He was making whips and whipping people out of temples and everything else. I mean, he wasn't like Mr. Meek and Mild, like a lot of people try to make him seem like.
Correct. But he also wasn't Mr. Political.
No, if we're talking about politics, then yes. So that's all you meant. As Christians, we're not necessarily supposed to cause waves as far as political issues go.
And the spotlight's not about it. And even Jesus, like the spotlight, he's God, right? Jesus was, and always will be God.
Yeah.
But check this out. He always deferred to the Father.
Yeah.
He's like, not my will, but the Father's be done. Pray to the Father. This is your Father's will. Like he always wanted to divert the people's attention to the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be doing. As soon as the spotlight becomes about us or our cause or whatever it is, then we've gone the wrong direction.
Yeah, but you would say there's certain issues that might. I mean, do you think we should stand up for certain issues that are anti-Christian?
Oh,
like
100%.
Something like abortion or something like
100%.
Right. Yeah. And that's going to cause waves, right? If we go anywhere and we say, hey, I'm pro-life. If I go stand in the mall in Santa Maria and I get on a little soapbox and I scream, I have a microphone. I say, I'm pro-life. I think abortion is murder. I'm going to cause some problems, right? Like,
which is ironic. In Santa Maria, California, yes. In Fort Worth, Texas, they'd be like, okay.
You get a standing ovation, probably.
So do we. I mean, sort of. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, like it's appalling that we have a culture that supports the killing of babies.
Right.
And that's why I could never be elected, really, probably to anything, but especially president, because in a debate stage, I would say I'm not for, the murdering of babies.
Right.
Without due process. I mean, we murder people in this country. Now it's not murder. Wow. What's his name? From Prager or you? Prager.
Dennis.
Dennis Prager. Yeah. And he would say, and so forgive him for my misspeech, but there's a difference between murder and justified killing. The Bible says do not murder.
Yes.
Correct. The Bible never says do not kill because we're allowed to eat meat.
Yes. Right? Yes. And the Bible shows people being killed in a justified way. Murder is wrong.
That's right.
Killing is not. And that's why when I used to get into the vegetarian debates, like you said, people say, oh, the Bible says don't murder. How can you be a meat eater? What are you talking about? Like, you don't know what you're talking about, Yeah,
they eat fish all the time. But just don't, kill cute animals and you'll be fine.
Right, exactly.
You'll be fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'll go on that soapbox for days. And again, I've been in the childcare space for over 16 years. One, I don't want to lower the population that could use our services in the future.
Right.
But two, like, let's not be about killing babies.
Right.
Well,
they wouldn't say it though. They wouldn't say it like that. Right. Like I've had people on the show that we've had this debate and most people on the pro-choice side do not believe that abortion is the killing of a baby. That's not the debate. The debate is really, is it a baby or is it not? Is it a life or is it not a life? Right. That's really what the debate is.
And who is the comedian? Oh, I'm drawing a blank, but yeah. I love his analogy
with the cake.
Yes.
Yeah.
I pour some batter in a pan and I put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. And then you come 5 minutes later, take it out and spill it all over the floor. And you say, well, it wasn't a cake yet. Yeah, but wait an hour and it would have been.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I had somebody on here that a couple episodes back, actually, as far as released ones go, I think it just released a couple weeks ago. But he used the word living, which I know sounds irrelevant. Life, living, same thing. But something about that wording just hit me. Like, it's living. Is it a life? Is it not a life? It's living. And it's going to continue living unless you do something to stop it from living. Yeah. Right? Like, it doesn't matter when life began. Like, oh, wait, sperm to egg is when life started. This to this, whatever. Anytime you're doing an abortion, is that thing living? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, regardless of when it started living, right. It either is or it isn't living. And if it's not living, you don't have to kill it. Just leave it alone. It'll die. It'll be dead. It'll stay dead. If it's dead, but it's not dead. It's living, So,
and I totally acknowledge that it is an unfair burden for female. And I'm not going to say birthing persons. No, but it is an unfair for those who are, now mothers or females, because yes, they are carrying the child and all of the medical things that come with it for the next 9 months. Get it. And I would not mind my tax dollars going to support mothers more.
Right.
right? If that's what
Yeah.
it takes.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I don't think I would call it unfair, though. I just think that's.
Well, I didn't say it was unfair. I just,
Oh, I thought you did. I thought you just said it was unfair.
I get there's more of a burden. You have to carry the child.
Sure. Yeah, when it comes to childbearing, yes. The woman does more of the work, obviously.
Right.
Right. This is another Jim Gaffigan thing. When I think about my part in the process, it's like,
But this actually, Ryan, it changed my view on birth control.
Okay.
I used to be very anti-birth control in schools and talk about sex education in schools and all the things. Because especially in California, because I was a young Reagan-esque Republican, and all of that. I'm like, kids should just keep it in their pants, even though I was totally hypocritical because totally
right.
Hypocritical. But after hearing some pro-life advocates and pro-life websites and ministries talk about their work, they're like, anything that helps prevent abortions, we're going to be okay with. Right? Does birth control help prevent pregnancies, which in turn helps limit abortions? Then technically, yes.
Yeah, it helps prevent unwanted pregnancies, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so technically birth control decreases abortions.
I'm with you. Yep.
And that just changed my paradigm a little bit. Because I was like, no, why, back in my 30s, I was like, why are we talking about condoms in schools?
Yeah.
And then, some health experts would say, because kids are going to do it anyway. Well, we should have more faith in those kids. There's a better parenting, yada, yada, yada. But here's the reality. It prevents abortions from happening.
Right. So you're saying that kind of changed your view on abstinence teaching versus safe sex teaching.
Oh, and teach both. You must teach abstinence with any sort of kind of sex ed curriculum.
Yeah.
You must. And when I was growing up in Newbury Park, California, they did. And they're like, hey, the 100% foolproof way not to get pregnant, not to get a venereal disease is abstinence.
Yeah.
You will avoid it all.
Right. Right.
Now, if you choose not to, here are other options that the state of California says that we must teach.
Right.
And, in the view of preventing abortions now, which for me is a bigger and better soapbox than teens having sex.
Right.
Do I like teens having sex? No.
Right.
Does it cause emotional damage and other things? Yes.
Yeah.
But I dislike the killing of babies more.
Right.
If that made sense. Right. So
no, it does. Yeah. I mean, for sure. If that's the way it would work. Right. If that, and you're right, it probably does prevent some of that, because obviously when somebody has an abortion, it's because they don't want the baby.
Right.
So if they're going to be sexually active, and they can be sexually active without even getting pregnant to begin with, obviously that's a better option than abortion.
And you mentioned this earlier, that what are we really talking about? And it's when you start to break down the arguments for abortion, it's not about that issue.
No.
Right. Or I think we're talking about the transgender debate. It's not about that issue. We can help the individual who's going through a crisis. We really can, with or without a church. There are resources to help somebody who has an unplanned pregnancy and doesn't know what to do.
Sure.
But Amy used to volunteer for Pregnancy Resource Center in Santa Maria.
Oh, CareNet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great organization.
Yeah.
And they ran statistics on abortions. And very rarely, it did happen, but very rarely were abortions for teen pregnancies or people coming in seeking abortions, I should say. Very rarely were people seeking abortions for medical situations. There's a big news article now coming out of Texas. I think it's Houston, a Houston mom is trying to fight with the state of Texas because her fetus was actually, no, it's still alive, but it was deemed with some congenital birth defect. Her doctors recommended an abortion. She couldn't get it in the state of Texas, and there's this big political battle.
Right.
Well, it's a medical situation. It's really hard. I've never been in that situation. It's tough to figure out. Right. Mm-hmm. Those are one-off cases. Fine. Let's just say for all rapes, incest, and medical situations, we narrowed it down.
Right.
That would still, and I'm being generous here, only equate for 2% of all abortions.
Yeah. 100%.
The most are out of convenience.
Yes.
Or typically working professionals. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when you have like non-married situations or extramarital situations, or like a working adult doesn't want to have to deal with a baby. And so it's out of convenience.
Right.
And so, but you present those facts, it's fine. I will give you all medical reasons, all rape and incest reasons, which incest, like, really, right? Like, like I'll get, incest is rape, basically. I'll give you all of those.
Yeah.
If it saves 98% of babies.
Yeah.
And they'll still say no.
Yeah. So. Well, there's one of the most famous Ben Shapiro clips, which I'm sure you've seen, is where he's talking to the young 20-something girl, and you know, they've cut it up in different pieces, and that's kind of what goes viral. It's the same one where he's talking to her about the transgender thing, and he says, "How old are you?" And she says, "I'm 22 or whatever." And he says, "Why aren't you 60?"
No, right.
What do you mean? He's like, "Why don't you identify as 60?" But in that same clip, she's talking, in that same discussion between those two people, she's talking about abortion and how, what about in race? She says, like, oh, they always do. What about the case of rape and incest? Mm-hmm. And he says, look, he's like, we can talk about rape and incest, but first I want to know, are you saying that you are against abortions except in the case of rape and incest? Mm-hmm. And she says, no, I think women should be able to get an abortion whenever they want to. And he says, then why are you bringing it up? Right. Why are you bringing up the 1 or 2% of abortions when you're totally fine with all of them, including the 98% that are just for convenience? Mm-hmm. Right. And you just kind of stopped her dead in her tracks, because you're only saying that to try to trap me.
Right.
When the reality is you're fine with any of them for any reason, at any time, at any cost, because it's become a feminist women's rights issue, and it's completely void of the rights of the baby at all. Nobody cares about that.
Well, and here's the irony, and then it falls into a spiritual matter as well. But, you know, we believe in the sanctity of human life.
Right.
And Christians don't necessarily hold the market on that, but we especially believe in the sanctity of human life.
Yeah.
All babies deserve a chance because the Lord gave us a second chance.
Right.
But even just taking it from a secular standpoint, and I'm curious why more either Republicans or conservative pundits don't argue this way. Here's the irony in the abortion debate. Abortions are most targeted to Black and Latino communities.
Yeah.
And by having abortions, technically, you are squashing the growth rate of Black and Latino citizens.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So tell me, what's more progressive? Allowing Black and Latino citizens to grow and not hindering, you know, their voting power, buying power, or keeping it just in check, right?
Yeah.
And then he'd say, well, you know, in those communities, you might have more teen pregnancies, and, you know, you have the literacy rates when that happens. You know, young women can't go to school, yada, yada. Okay, let's address those issues. Again, I'm willing to spend our government money for those.
Yes,
but why do you feel the need to kill our Black and Latino babies, especially?
Right. And why does we say, okay, these are problems in our society. These are problems. Why does the answer to the problem, the solution, always have to be death? Well, abortion, that's the solution. Well, why don't we maybe find some way to where teen pregnancies aren't happening more often? Let's figure out that solution. You know, let's nip it in the bud before it gets to the point of that. You know, you know what I mean? It's just, it's crazy. But anyway, we're gonna have to cut it there for our that section. But we're gonna get into spiritual. I told Bethany
back into music.
Well, we're done with music. We're gonna get into spirituality next. But I told Bethany before we started. I said, I said, I have a feeling this one's going to go longer. I said, probably give me to like 5. And I said, just because it's Rob. So me and him can talk for hours. There's a few people that I've had on here where I've had to tell her that. Cause I know, cause I've talked to people before. We've talked so many times. I know that you and I could probably do this for 12 hours. We could probably just go back and forth for 12 hours. I mean, it'd be past your bedtime because it's like 7 o'clock there right now. Right.
That's
something
6,
like that.
yeah.
Oh,
but I'm in my 40s
ahead.
now, so I'm going to bed earlier and earlier.
So, all right, I'm gonna go take one last
spirituality. Like that is the. I'm sorry. That's the cruel gift that God gives you when you have teenagers, because you naturally get older as your kids get older, and so you want to go to bed earlier, and you're losing more, or you're getting more out of touch with your kind of younger, energetic side. But meanwhile, your teens want to stay up till midnight.
Right.
And so that's the great dichotomy.
Yes. That's the Lord laughing at us.
That's right.
So, all right, man, let's jump into spirituality. So, why don't you go ahead and tell the story of how you became a Tibetan monk?
Well, it all started with my anger management issues. So, yeah. Okay. So no joke. Right. And God works, I guess, according to Bono, mysterious ways. But God works.
Well, that was she moves in mysterious ways. I don't think he was talking about God, but anyway. Unless he's saying God's a she, which I don't think he is because he's a Christian, but.
No, but Alanis Morissette, did have me believing for a half second. It was a cool movie, one of those generation changers.
Yeah.
So I had this buddy growing up when I lived in Vancouver, Washington for a year, hence my connection to the rest of your family.
Yeah.
And living in Vancouver, Washington during my 8th grade year. And I was this nerdy, I still am, but I was this nerdy kid in 7th grade, move up to live with my brothers for my 8th grade year. And when you're 14 and get exposed to a new environment, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. And maybe just like my son, Ben, like my frontal lobe went away at that time. But I started to become not this nerdy little honors kid anymore, but just this regular Adidas hoodie wearing,
shoplifter
guy. What?
Shoplifter.
So, right, almost. Except they were so big, right? I mean, the cardboard like stuck out even of the big pockets. So, and then the hard plastic would be itchy. So it's hard. Okay, so I had this friend, MJ Rourke, and he was this sarcastic guy. He was really funny. He was journalism class with me. But over the 8th grade year, he started to get into smoking pot because he'd get it from his brother and take hits off his bong and all the things. And I was like this close to getting into it. But then the Lord, and I hated it, or I hated the idea of moving at the time, but the Lord moved me and my mom back to California, which ended up being good because I probably would have just spiraled downward.
Right. And you would never would have met me. So then your life would have been miserable.
But I would have met Danny. And so still some connection.
That's true.
Still some connection. Anyway, so Vancouver. And so he became involved first in pot and then sleeping around. And then he started selling pot. And then he got into heroin. And his life just tumbled.
Dang, that's a pretty big jump from weed to heroin.
Or there were probably things in between, but yeah, He got into hard stuff.
Dang.
And I only heard this like through the grapevine, which is in California. But and just kind of lost track with him, right? And before social media was a thing. And then, as you do, you just start Google searching your friends, and some random Saturday night. And so I looked up his name, and lo and behold, he'd become like a Franciscan monk.
No way.
Like full on friar. He is now Friar MJ Rourke.
Dude.
And shaved head and like everything. Cool little goatee. But but he had destroyed, and it was Vancouver, Washington, right across the bridge from Portland, Oregon. That area just needs a lot of spiritual help in general.
Yep.
And again, his life had just gone down the toilet. His parents had given up on him, and it just became a heroin addict. And then the Lord just grabbed him, and now he's a French monk. Yeah. And I guess it's working, right? It's not my cup of tea. You don't have to be a monk, but I haven't reached out. I wouldn't know how. I don't know if they're allowed cell phones or email or whatever, but
right. That's cool though. I mean, at least that got him off the lifestyle he was into,
Yeah. And to become a zealot for the Lord. Right. Rather than just drugs, your own life. Yeah. And so I have a newfound appreciation for monks.
Okay. All right. Like, you're not going to go for it. Are you going to go for it? Or can you be a Christian monk?
I've got these moles like in the back of my head. I could never do like even the Ryan Hester thing, like the gentle, I can't. And bald and beautiful did not go together with me.
No. Okay. Well, not everybody can pull it off as good as I can, so.
And so if I didn't have a great wife, then I'd consider being, I don't know.
Regimented, but you grew up in the church somewhat, right? Your mom was a Christian pretty much your whole life.
Yeah. So she dragged me to church. I remember the benefit of getting saved. I was like a 9-year-old, and you get the Butterfinger candy bar.
Oh, that's right.
So that's why I wanted to do it. But compared to my brothers, like I grew up in the church,
right?
And church was home, and I didn't really grow up with a dad. Mm-hmm. And so Heavenly Father was my father, but also like the youth group leaders wherever I was plugged into. Yeah. Right. And so I always have a great respect for junior high, senior high youth group leaders.
And you got into that yourself, right? You've spent time as a youth leader yourself, right?
Right. Now, ironically, I do much better with kids or children's programming.
Like the younger kids?
Oh, yeah. Like elementary age.
Yeah.
Because I love to play. I love camp. Yeah. And like when you're a teenager, you're just over it. Right.
Right.
And I am not cool by any stretch of the imagination. Like Ryan Hester would be an amazing youth group leader because like you're bilingual.
Right? Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah.
English and sarcasm.
Yes. Yes.
So it helps. So you're bilingual. You speak the truth, right? You don't need to sugarcoat anything. And that's what teens need.
That's why I have so many friends.
And you like music. You have an entire first section of your podcast talking about music. I can't even name 5 albums, but you've got this like catalog in your brain.
Yeah. But I generally don't like teenagers, so I don't think I would be a good youth leader.
You'd be a perfect youth leader. You'd be like Mike Winger. It'd be great. Paul Washer.
Yeah. So anyway, so you got saved by the Butterfinger when you were about 9, or do you have an experience later on where you would say you actually got saved, or do you see the 9-year-old thing as actual salvation?
Yeah. Good question. I think the Lord honors a child's faith. Mm-hmm. Right? Do they fully understand everything of the gospel or of the Bible?
Right.
No.
Do we now?
No.
Right. Exactly. Will we ever? No. So,
I do think, like, can you accept Jesus as your forever friend in your heart when you're a small child? Yes. Right. I believe my kids did that. Do you have a greater appreciation for the gospel when it finally hits you, whether that's as a teenager, young adult, or beyond, the weight and the gravity of your own sin?
Yeah.
And how much Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection really did for you. Mm-hmm. And to really cry out, like, not just Abba Father, but like, Jesus is Lord. Not just that, like, Jesus is God and that we're the one, like, no, Jesus is Lord.
Right.
Like, come and be king, come and be CEO, come and be like supervisor over my life. And I'm a mess. Like, when you're 8, yes, you've sinned. I believe all have sinned and fallen short, but you're not going to go to jail for your sins, right? At that age.
Right.
But when your frontal lobe disappears at age 13, 14, and and you're making like sins, like you're making deliberate choices to not follow God, not just to not follow your parents or not follow your team, like not follow God. Like, and we've all been there. And then it hits you like, wow, this is why the Lord died for me. That I think you develop a greater appreciation. That's why I think so many teenagers get saved at that time.
Yeah.
Or like young adults, and why people who, and the Lord will reach anybody at any time, and he'll keep reaching out to you. But why it's actually easier to get saved as a teenager or a young adult, because your mind's still forming
right
at that age, and you're old enough to realize that you're a screw up and that you need help and that your parents can't do it for you, and you're still growing. But like once you hit, your 30s, like your mind's kind of set.
Yeah.
And it's really with anything in education. But it's much harder to learn.
Yeah.
And be receptive to the gospel. Again, anybody can get saved at any time.
Sure. But the critics would come in and say that that's you Christians trying to brainwash the kids when they're young and impressionable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No doubt.
Well, that's my answer too. And I'm saying, well, because it all comes down to, is it true or is it not true? And if it is true, then yes, let's brainwash the kids with the truth.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. Hands down. It's just good for you, right? Do we indoctrinate kids to say that vegetables are good for you? Yeah, nobody wants to eat vegetables, except for it's crazy delicious.
Which ones?
But fried okra.
Ugh.
Esther, no.
No, that must be a country, a Texas thing, dude. Because I can't do the okra.
No, you don't do. You do fried okra, and
I've
you can
had
deep
fried
fry
okra.
a boot, and it will still taste good.
Yeah,
it's
the rubber
delicious.
hose. Some cocktail sauce. This is good hose.
Mostly ranch. We don't do cocktail sauce. That's for
that's for weirdos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do ranch. Okra. No okra.
Yeah, if you fry anything and stick it in ranch, it will taste good. And in fact, that's probably what we need to do to the Dallas Cowboys. Just fry them, put them in ranch, and they'll start performing better.
Oh my gosh. So
anyway, yeah, what were we talking? Yeah. So I think I fully came to terms with faith really when I started attending Calvary Chapel Santa Maria.
Right.
And recognizing what it meant to, now I was also a young father at that time. Right. And that puts things in perspective.
Right.
Because like you're holding this baby in your arms. And giving it back to the mom to change the diaper, but you're holding this baby in the arm as a joke, by the way. Don't let Amy listen to the podcast. No. So, and you're like, the Father loves me this much.
Right.
It's like, oh, the Father will forgive me this much. And this is how the Lord sees me. So that's a special moment, but yeah, really as a young adult, because I was a knucklehead and I was living in both worlds as a high schooler and even my college years, trying to have like one foot in the Christian scene and then one foot just doing whatever I wanted to do. And that wasn't healthy. So,
right. So it kind of solidified at Calvary Santa Maria. And then obviously you guys moved around quite a bit after that. No, I'm not going to ask that. Let's jump into.
Why? Oh no, that's a forbidden question.
No, it's not a forbidden question. I just realized it was going to get into
music
something with Amy, but I'm going to talk to Amy anyway, so I'll get her story when I talk to her.
No, that's cool. Yeah, you can save all the great questions for her. That's fine.
Yeah. No, not the great questions. Just what's dealing with her specifically. Just because I always find it interesting to say, like when people meet, were they believers? Were they not? Were they just that kind of thing? But let's talk about some of the. You mentioned early on, we were talking, I think it was in the political section, but you were talking about kind of, I don't remember how you worded it specifically, but there's obviously a big difference between religion and in our case, Christianity. What we would call true spirituality would be Christianity. That's our personal belief system, but there's plenty of religious Christians. Like there's a religion called Christianity. And I see a difference between somebody who is religiously Christian and somebody who's actually following Christ, which as far as I'm concerned, that's a biblical true Christian. Somebody who's like literally a follower of Jesus, not just a I go to church sometimes. I might pick up the Bible when I'm having a hard time. I might pray every once in a while when I need help or whatever. Mm-hmm. And none of those things are bad in of themselves. Obviously, you should pray when you need help. You should read the Bible. You should go to church, right? But there's this different kind of mindset where it's somehow, as long as I do that every once in a while, I can just be myself the rest of the time. And I think that's religion, right?
Yeah,
so,
sort of. It's interesting. Like if you read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, he would make the case for being careful how we is what I remember. It's been years, but he'd make the case for being careful how we label people. So the person, and I know where you're getting at, but I wanted to make a clear distinction because somebody who may only read the Bible every once in a while or pray every once in a while, they may be a weak Christian, but still Christian.
Sure.
It depends on and there's not a biblical analogy, but I think where your soul is pointed and where, you should be. And again, the Bible says Romans 10, if you believe with your heart and confess Jesus is Lord with your mouth, you will be saved. And so if someone can do that, but they're just weak in their practices, I think they're still a Christian.
Well, sure. But I think for me with that verse, the key is believe in the heart. And a lot of times we align that with believe in the mind, right? Like you ask somebody, do you believe in Jesus? Yes. And we say, oh, you believe in your heart. I don't think that's the same thing. Does that make sense?
And what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is I think that, for example, they do polls. And I think the last one they did was they said 75% of America is Christian. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I both know that 75% of the people in this country are not born again. They're not saved. They're not indwelt by the Spirit of Christ. If they were, we would see a much different world than what we're seeing.
Right.
So, but if you were to ask all of those people, and this is how they get the poll, they say, well, do you believe in Jesus? Well, yeah. Right. So they have a mental belief in Jesus, but doesn't mean it's necessarily a heart belief. Like the heart, when the Bible talks about your heart, that's like your inner soul, your person, like who you really are. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the thing that drives this physical body around on the earth. The body's going to die someday. The body's not who I am. Who I am is my spirit on the inside, my heart. Mm-hmm. So to believe in the heart, I think, is something much deeper than what most Christians may mean it to be, right?
Yeah. And I see where you're going. And we see that a lot here in Texas. Mm-hmm. And we had a friend in San Jose, or the whole family really, but a friend who became a missionary in Ethiopia and other parts of Africa, Eastern Africa. And Adam Chanley and his family. And he never lived or visited in Texas, but I see parallels from what he was talking about in Eastern Africa. Compared particularly Ethiopia, which is more Coptic Christianity. And then, here in Texas where Christianity or Christian belief system is a mile wide, but only an inch deep.
Right.
And it's a stereotype, but I that's how I compare the difference of church going folk. In California, Texas. If you say that you're going to church in California, you mean it. There's no other reason why it's cool to go to church in California. And again, this is broad stereotype. No other reason why it's cool to go to church in California other than, hey, you want to pursue the Lord or whatever religion you're into, right? But you're Christian. Where here, it's just the thing to do, particularly once a month. And go to church once a month because it's part of community or it's part of who you follow, whatever. And you're not allowing Jesus to be Lord.
Sure.
It's hard to really slice and dice who is or isn't saved. Because
of course, yes,
it's working on us.
Of course, and that's not necessarily our job, really. Anyway, I agree with Paul Washer said something like that one time. He said, it's not a person's job or a pastor's or whoever. It's not a human's job to tell another human that they are not saved. Mm-hmm. But it's also not a human's job to tell another person that they are saved. Right. And that's where we get into trouble too. You say, well, how do you know you're saved? Well, I prayed the prayer. Well, I'm a member at my church. Well, I give to charity. Right. There's all these human things you can say. And some of those are all wonderful things. I'm not knocking those things, But those things are not the reason a person's a Christian. Those things are byproducts of a person who is a Christian, right? Like could be, or they could just be a person who's not saved, who's doing great things. I mean, I know atheists who are wonderful people who do great things for people, you know, so.
And what was the original question?
I don't remember. We're just talking about the difference between religion and true Christianity, and just like going to church versus, you know, and there, I mean, I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. It's hard to tell. And I was just saying, it's not necessarily our job to tell. Like we are supposed to be fruit inspectors, as Chuck Smith would say, right? We are shown many parts of scripture that say this is what a Christian will look like. And it's by no means a picture of perfection. Sure. Like, oh, if you have a Christian friend and he commits sin, obviously he's not Christian. Get him out of your group. He's not a Christian. Right, you know, right? There's no Christian that doesn't sin. But for me, the litmus test is always what happens after the sin. That's always not what sin you committed, how many times you committed it. My question is, what happened to you when you committed that sin? Were you broken? Were you crying out to the Lord, asking for forgiveness? Or are you just like, God understands. He's my homie. We're tight. He gets it. He understands my desires. Yeah, I cheated on my wife 4 times, but he knows I have needs. You know, he understands. The person that's defending themselves like that, I'm kind of like, again, I can't know for sure, but I'm kind of like, no, I don't know. That doesn't sound like conviction to me. Like, you know, so, yeah. But anyway, another thing that you mentioned, unless you have more to say on that topic.
I can talk for hours, but I'll go question.
The other thing you mentioned earlier was prayer. And prayer is something that, well, I'm not going to tell you my thoughts on it. I'm going to let you tell me. First, you go ahead and kind of give me your viewpoint on prayer. Just in general.
Definition, or, you know.
Well, I think I forgot exactly what you said earlier. Something like we need to be praying for these people, or we need to be praying for our country. I forgot exactly what you said, but something along the lines of we need to pray for something.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very broad topic.
It is. But, yes, it is.
You know, prayer is like a spiritual muscle, and we are called to pray, and Jesus prayed. And it is our way to talk with the Lord. I heard a wise comment once that prayer is the way that we communicate with the Lord, whether individually or corporately, and we're called to do both. And the Bible is the way that primarily the Lord communicates with us.
Right.
Can he communicate to us through prayer? Absolutely. Can we communicate through God the written prayer? Sure. Are we showing honor to God when we serve others? Yes, absolutely. But we mainly pray to God, silently spoken, and he mainly communicates to us with his Bible because it's solid and it's his word, and he doesn't need anymore. It's revelation. So yeah, prayer is a spiritual discipline. It's not easy. I see it in our own like Sunday school kids where like it's always the same, like few girls. It's always girls who want to pray.
Yeah.
And then I like look at my own kids and like they're even like afraid to like pray. Some of them pray over like our meal. And again, mostly that's just the one without the frontal lobe. And it's like we got to be able to, sometimes we're called to pray in public, and sometimes we're called to pray privately, and we just need to make a habit of it, like brushing our teeth. So we don't always like doing it.
So what's in your view, kind of like what's the end goal of prayer?
Yeah. So I teach our Sunday school kids, you might have heard it before. It's kind of cliche, but it works. The ACTS model, A.C.T.S. Have you heard about that before?
Apples, carrots, tomatoes, and celery.
And let's make a fruit salad. No, Ryan Hester, no. So for the listeners at home, the ACTS model, A.C.T.S. Again, it's it's religion, but it's just a helpful model for you to think about prayer. What does the A stand for? Adoration. And so we spend our prayer time, or part of our prayer time, praising God, saying, God, you are so good. You are so big. We see this in the Lord's Prayer. It starts off that way. We see this throughout the Psalms, not necessarily thanking God. That comes, that's a part of it, but adoration is separate. God, you made the heavens. God, you made me, right? A masterpiece. God,
yes,
you are God. You are just. God, we thank you for being faithful. And it's giving adoration and worship to God. So, in a sense, part of worship is prayer and vice versa. And then you have the C, which is confession. Again, in no particular order. It's just a fun acronym to help you think about it and what we teach to the kids at church. But the C stands for confession. And so we confess our sins, sometimes to each other, but certainly to the Lord. Like, Lord, I've messed up. Lord, I need forgiveness. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us, or we forgive our debtors. And it's just putting it all on the table for the Lord, right? In the Catholic tradition, they have the idea of the confessional, but that's where it stems from.
Right.
To just, I don't think you need an intermediary because Jesus tore down that veil. But to say, God, Jesus, I messed up, and please forgive me for this. And then we get to the T, thanksgiving. And that's what us do naturally in prayer. And these next two, thanksgiving, Lord, thank you for X and Y and Z. Great. But I think we should even be thankful for the small stuff. Like, Lord, thank you for giving me food today. Right? Yeah, sure. Thank you for my car not breaking down today. Give me to go. Because sometimes we can take things for granted until we have to put them to the shop, whether it's our bodies or our Hyundais.
Right.
And then the S is what my kids know is a 50-cent word, but it's supplication. And that's just asking for the things we need, not necessarily for the things that we want. And a good buddy of mine, Ryan Hester, once told me that as we grow closer to the Lord, our prayers will manifest his will for our lives. But we stop asking for the Porsche or the BMW. We begin to ask, hey, Lord, if it's in your will, heal this person. Or Lord, I really want my daughter to be, my daughters, right, to be eventually married to strong Christian men. Right. Can you please make that happen?
Yeah. So that's what's interesting. And I use the term in your will, which I think is awesome because that's something that's lacking a lot of times. Right. But when we say, a lot of people don't even know when we say in Jesus' name at the end of a prayer, biblically, what that means is your will be done, right? You're basically saying, these are my petitions, but not my will, but yours be done, which is what Jesus prayed to the Father. But if this is the struggle that I have sometimes, is like, there's a few struggles I have. This is the first one I'm going to mention to you. To be praying for God's will. In other words, what if I don't pray for God's will to be done? God's will still be done, right? Because it's God's will. So what part do I play in the prayer process? I agree with you that scripture tells us to pray. We're told to pray, but I don't always understand the reasons behind that because I kind of view God as going to do what God's going to do. Right? I mean, it's God knows what he's doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes that's my prayer. Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. Right? So it's but if it's not his will to help me in that moment, my praying for him to help me is not, because he knows better than me. He knows, Ryan, if I help you right now, you're not going to learn that lesson at, 6 months down the line. Right?
Oh, sure. But the idea of prayer is, again, like talking to your heavenly Father. I know a lot of teenage girls who don't want to talk to their father, human fathers at all. Right. But it'd be a real shame if there was literally zero communication,
right?
With your father. And so,
and I get the communication aspect. I always liken it to you get married. It's like getting saved and never praying is like getting married and then just never talking to your wife after the wedding day. Sure. You're never getting to know her. You're not talking and learning about her. You're not,
But that's why, with prayer, supplication, again, that 50-cent word, like asking for your needs. It is okay. It is ask your parents for needs that come up, and they will sometimes bless you. Right. And the Lord will sometimes bless you, and it may be in his will, but maybe you don't know it yet. But when you're asking for something, the answer is either yes, no, or wait. And if you're listening, you'll get an answer. Right. There are instances, particularly in the Old Testament, like where the Lord blessed both the author and blessed the people. Yeah. So I don't think it's wrong to beseech the Lord for certain things. But again, at the end of the day, saying, hey, Lord, your will be done, which is really interesting to me, why we pray so much for healings. Yes. And not that that's wrong. And I'm all about that. Right. But we should be praying for everything else just as equally as healings. And I'm getting to the point now in prayers where it's like, let's say somebody comes down with cancer, and that's horrible. And it's just, it's not easy. But there might be deeper prayers in there to say, Lord, hey, as they're going through cancer and can't work, like, please take care of families, or open up our eyes to see how we can be the church and, help take care of other families, or whatever the response is, or Lord, please soften the family's heart around them so they can celebrate life and not in deep mourning and despair and can't function, or Lord, their family situation has turned into an ugly mess, fighting over like inheritance. Please soften their heart. Like there are lots of different prayers for supplication that we can do in addition to healing, but healing just is just front and center, top of mind. Right. When he may not heal that person from cancer, but use the situation.
Right. And that's where praying for his will comes into play, right? Because our first thing is always, well, I'm going to pray that this disease goes away. But to me, that's presumptuous, because that assumes that that person's not supposed to have that disease for whatever reason. Like, God is always in control, right? Like, nobody has any what we would call bad happen to them out of the hands of God, right? Like, whatever happens, God is allowing that to happen for whatever reason. It could be that he's allowing it to happen so the whole church gets together and prays, and that the person is miraculously healed and everybody's faith is built. And it's just amazing, miraculous thing. That could be. It could be because that person is no longer going to be on this earth anymore. And both things could be part of God's will. But it's like, for humans, it's hard for us to grasp that second one. It's hard for us to believe, because we always say things like, well, a God of love, why does he do this? A God of love. And it's always, atheists, it's always their number one critique is in believing in God, is he's human suffering. If there's a God of love, why is there human suffering? Well, because you're not God and you don't understand the reasons behind the suffering that's taking place, right? But, you mentioned a minute ago about thanking him that your car didn't break down, right? And I could think to myself, well, in the same vein, if your car does break down, shouldn't we also thank him for that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, because it's like, it is obviously his will, or else your car wouldn't have broken down. Now, maybe a guy comes by, it's going to help you out. You're going to meet this guy. You're going to witness to him. The Lord's going to, this is just all hypothetical, of course, but he's going to witness to him, and this guy's going to get saved. Awesome. But,
yeah. Here's a neat picture. There's an old movie with Robert Duvall called The Apostle.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Goes out and kicks the crap out of Billy Bob Thornton.
I think so.
I love that scene.
But he's this itinerant preacher, traveling preacher, and he's in, maybe it's his mom's house, I don't know, but he's in some house, and he's in like some upstairs bedroom, and the camera pans in on him, and he's praying to God, and he's praying like really vividly and openly, and not religiously at all, which is what I love about this scene. And he's like, Lord, I love you, but I am mad at you.
Yeah.
Lord, I don't understand. I believe you can do anything. I am mad at you. And how cool is this picture of just being open and honest with the Lord? Because the Lord knows our emotions.
Of course.
We're going through.
Yeah, we can't pull the wool over his eyes.
That's
like, he knows when we're mad at him or we're upset about something, for sure.
And so how neat, right? Or to be sad when you're praying, or to be like, don't sin in your anger, but to be like angry, when we're praying, or to be disappointed or upset, or like whatever the emotion is,
right.
To say, Lord, it sucks that my car broke down and I didn't get the job or do it. Like, I don't understand. And I don't know if it's you or the enemy or a combination of both, like whatever it is. But like, help me understand or help me get through it. I got nothing right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And like a pastor friend of mine said one time, you can pray for whatever you want. That's fine. But as long as you understand and are fine with the fact that the Lord's will be done, as long as you have that concept in mind, like, I would even say that praying for a Porsche isn't necessarily wrong.
No.
As long as you're like, yeah, but the Lord's will be done, right? Maybe I'll get a Pinto. Maybe I'll get a mountain bike, say, all right, Lord wants me to get some more exercise. He wants me to ride my bike to work every day or something,
Yeah. And that falls under another spiritual quality of joy. And we just happened to learn about it in Sunday school today, but the difference between joy versus happiness.
Oh my gosh, dude. Bethany and I were literally just talking about this morning. Literally just talking about it this morning. Wow. Okay. Yeah, so give me your spiel on that then. That's awesome.
I helped facilitate that conversation with like the kids in Sunday school. And then we heard about that same difference, like in the sermon today. So happiness is, I was trying to tell the kids, like happiness is temporary.
Right.
You get your favorite flavor of ice cream, your parents go out. And that's great. But does it last? No, it doesn't last. Right.
No.
But
there's always more though.
Yes. Right. Especially in Texas, when your dollar goes farther, you don't get taxed for every scoop.
That's right.
You should really move east, young man.
Yeah, well,
but joy is just not describing well, but the essence is of a contentment. And for Christians, right. it's joy in the Lord, knowing one, that his will be done, two, that he's holding us in the palm of his hand. He's got the best intentions for us. It is joy, even in the darkest of circumstances. Things are going to be okay.
Right.
And have contentment, have kind of wisdom of understanding there.
Right. And it's so freeing if we can ever fully get into that mindset. Like my favorite verse in the whole Bible, which you probably know this, I probably said it a million times. Most of my close friends know this, but is when Paul said to live is Christ and to die is gain. Because and to me, it encompasses everything. And I think that if every Christian could fully 100% adopt that, like not just mentally, but I mean like their whole being to live that way, there would be no problems. Like you literally, no matter what, it's like, okay, to live, I'm here for the Lord. Whatever's happening, whatever's going on, this guy's going to beat me up. This guy's okay. It's all for the Lord, whatever's. And if I kill me, it's gain. Now I'm with the Lord. Right. But none of us live that way because it's so hard to live that way in the flesh. Cause like, I don't want to die. I don't want to feel pain. I don't want all these bad things. I don't want this for my kids or my family or my wife or none of this. No, I don't want any of that. But if I could truly just rest in knowing, who loves my family more than me? God. And he is in total control. And if anything's going to ever happen to any of them, it's him allowing it. That's rough, right? That's rough to think about. It's rough to try to adapt to that because I think as humans, we just don't function that way, right? Like we live in this like a survival mode all the time. Like, well, I gotta live. I gotta live to be 80, 90 years old. Why? Well, you don't want to live, be long? No, I'm not saying I'm suicidal, but the Lord already knows the time and place when I'm going to die. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. Maybe it'll be when I'm 112.
Sure.
I don't know. He knows, and he knows why, right? I'm not saying we should live recklessly. Like, I'm driving one way on the freeway and going 90. Oh, I guess it's not my day to die, Lord. No, that's stupid. But, so anyway. All right, man. Well, we're nearing the end here. You got any
that was the extent of the spiritual questions.
No, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of questions. One of the other things I kind of like to touch on, and maybe we'll do that as the last thing, unless you have a different topic you want to talk about. But it's just the idea of absolute truth. And I think I know where you stand on this. So where do you stand on that? Does it exist?
Well, short answer, yes, but and how you define it. So is there absolute God's truth? Yes. Is there an absolute like political truth? No. A musical truth? No.
Right.
And so,
to say does absolute truth exist doesn't negate subjective truth. I'm just saying, are there anything in our universe or outside of our universe that you would call absolute truth?
So, yes. Now, the tricky part, particularly for Christians who may disagree with each other on like topics, is our interpretation of said absolute truth.
Okay. So give me an example of what you mean by that.
Golly gumdrops. So I've been tasked with helping to present Nazarene doctrine, even though I still wouldn't necessarily call myself like full Nazarene, but I've been tasked with the fourth Wednesday of every month presenting what the Nazarene Church stands for, our Wednesday adult study. Okay. And there are things from the website going through, and there's a lot of commonalities there between other denominations. But I've kept teasing out the idea to say, okay, friends, some of these Sundays coming, or one of these Wednesdays coming soon, I'm going to present particulars of the Nazarene denomination, because there are particulars. There's nuances with every denomination. And so what is it that are like really distinct qualifiers that you should know? Not asking you to agree, not asking you to debate. I'm just presenting the information because you need to know kind of what kind of church you're stepping into. And in terms of like the very unique stuff. Yeah. One of those unique items, which again, I'm going to qualify 100% Nazarene for issues like these. But one of those items is that they allow women in the title of pastorship.
Okay. All right.
Brass tacks. And maybe this is something you could talk about with somebody else on the podcast, but one of the things that we could debate about as Christians is the idea of women pastors or women in head pastoral leadership, or however you want to define it.
Sure.
And the Nazarene Church believes in that idea. Now, do you see very many female-led congregations? No. But they would hold that both men and women can hold that title or that role uniformly or equally.
Right.
However, I heard a very in-depth series of talks by Mike Winger, neat guy off YouTube. And he said, hey, went through a lot of different things, but the end statement was that, hey, the Bible does not support that idea that women are equal in the sight of the Lord, but they have different roles. And one of those is described in the New Testament, where the title of, senior pastor, or however you want to define it, but the title of elder, senior, authoritative speaker in the church, like is for. And so, that is one example of where Christians can disagree with each other, and where we still interpret truth differently. Nazarene Church as a whole, like non-Christian? No, absolutely not. Might they be wrong on that particular issue? Yes.
Right.
And maybe they are not seeing the fullness of God's blessings if they're not living in accordance with his word.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that means they're not saved if they hold that view. But I mean, this comes down to like, are we going to take the authority of Scripture over personal feelings and what people think? And, this is something I was actually just having this discussion the other day with somebody. And what do we do with the verse in Corinthians where Paul says, women are to remain silent in the church and they are not to speak? He's not even talking about pastors there. He's just saying women are not allowed to speak in church. Now, if you take the verse at face value, women should not be talking in church. Okay. But in today's society, what do we do with that? Oh, well, that can't possibly be what he means because, women are speaking in church. I mean, women are wonderful speakers in church. They have great things. I mean, you're trying to tell me that women, how sexist, how misogynist. That's where we go with it. But if you're a Bible literalist, Can't do that.
And
Right?
so, yeah. And so I think as Christians, we are free to debate while seeking the Lord's will, not our own will, on how he wants us to lead us, and then deal with each other respectfully. So I believe there's an absolute truth, absolute 100%. I think the Lord will sometimes look down and smile. We try to figure out what that is. I think the Lord is clear enough, especially when it comes to the gospel.
Right.
But some of the nuances on how we carry out the church. He's like, okay, guys, I'll let you hash it out.
Yeah, but see, I don't know how much of that I would say is nuances and how much of it I would say is things people just don't like in our society. So we try to find other ways to view it. Like use that verse as an example. I've heard so many pastors teach it like this. Well, you need to understand, see, in the Corinthian church, the men sat on one side and the women sat on the other side. And see, the women were yelling questions over to their husbands. So Paul was just telling them for their own church, they need to be quiet and ask their husbands at home.
Right. But even outside that issue, like to take it from a more broader context, like the idea of tithing. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Tithe. I have friends say, no, absolutely 10%. And I'm like, well, are you adhering to every other Old Testament value as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Jesus tells it like everything's mine. So how much of my money are you keeping?
See,
for
that's
yourself?
What's difficult. And and I'm with you. I believe in the New Testament view of giving, and all my money belongs to the Lord. However, humanly, I like the idea of tithing better. Because then I can just give 10% and say, okay, now I don't feel guilty about spending the other 90% on myself. You see, I've already given God his due,
But in Texas, you still have some more liturgical or very traditional values, where if you're not giving 10%, then you're in sin.
Right.
Or if you're not reading from the New King James, you're in sin.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So, there are open-handed versus closed-handed issues, but that's what I'm talking. So yes, there is an absolute truth. Yeah. There is a God. I'm not it. And I believe he's given us scripture to help along the way.
So do you view scripture as being absolute truth?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is error-free to the degree that even if I can't explain it with science or philosophy or otherwise, it is still true. And the error is on me or you, not in the word of God. So I have friends who believe that the earth might have taken a long time to create, more than just 6 days. Right. Or even I have one friend who said, God could have used evolution. And I'm like, okay, but then what other parts of the Bible are free? And please don't tell me that Jesus was just a fun myth, because if I can't believe, right? Because that happened 2,000 years ago. Am I to trust that text? Like I wasn't there. Yeah. Tell me what parts are literal and what parts are not. Did frogs really come from the sky? Did the Red Sea, or the Moses and the stick, really turn to blood? Like what, did God really not create the world in 6 days? Yeah, I believe he can do it.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And for me, the question is always not can he, but did he? People will say, well, he could have done it this way. Well, he could have. You're right. He's God. He could have done it however he wanted to. He could have. Right. I mean, shoot, he could have created the earth in 5 seconds if he wanted to. But the Bible tells us he took 6 days. Do we know why? Nope. Other than to give us our 7-day week, maybe. I don't know. And to have the Sabbath and that whole thing that came from that. Who knows?
Yeah.
So.
It's as we mature in the Lord, with our politics, even with our music, that is how we become, better disciples. That is how we grow in maturity.
Right. So. Yeah, man. All right, dude. Well, we made it.
Hopefully haven't been too boring for you. No. I left some Easter eggs. As you were going up to take a potty break. So
I figured you were. I was in there sitting there going, I bet he's saying stuff right now. I bet he totally is. That's so awesome. Now I'm excited to look for it later. So,
and I will give you one opener for the rest of your podcast that I tend to use on every interview that I have.
Okay.
You ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay. It is Okay, Mr. and Mrs. If you could identify yourself as any breakfast cereal, what breakfast cereal would you be and why?
Wow, that's a good question, dude.
I know. That's why
the kind of thing that would keep me up all night thinking about it. So, well, I'm gonna have to get back to you on my answer on that one because that's gonna take a lot of thought. But I will definitely text you with my answer. But so thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. You're as always one of my favorite people to talk to. So it's always good talking to you and bouncing stuff back and forth.
I thought it would be boring, and I thought, am I just going to be preaching to the choir? Like, we have too much in common. Is this even going to be fun for him?
Yeah. No, it's always. I mean, either or. I like it either way. I just like connecting with people and talking and. Whether I've known you for a million years or I just meet you, you know, I've had people that I'm literally meeting the day they walk into my living room.
That's cool. That's
so
cool.
You know, and it's always a fun time. So, all right, man. Well, hey, you enjoy the rest of your evening and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. It's a neat calling and tell the family I said, hey.
I will. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
I greatly appreciate you giving this episode a listen. Do me a favor and help spread the word to those that you know. If you have any questions or comments for me, don't hesitate to reach out. My email is whycan'twetalkaboutThat@proton.me. Here's a snippet from next week.
Like the kids have words nowadays for their feelings, for emotions, for the way, you know, like the word gaslighting exists now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't exist back in high school for me.
Nope,
if it did, I would have had words to be like, excuse you, sir. You are gaslighting me right now. There would have been better words for that. You know, and so had I had the words back in high school, I would have identified probably as like pansexual and male leaning.
Okay.
And I don't know if I would have gone as far as identifying as male, but I possibly, like, if high school me was in school now, probably because of a little bit more groupthink nowadays kind of happening with that.
Sure.
But, you know, I would have had that identity at the time without Jesus. And so, like, I come from a place where I get it. Like, I do. I really do. And that has morphed now for me because my love for everyone, I'm realizing, is not just a sexual love, right? Like, which is what the world's version of love really kind of was.
Right. Yes.
And I love everyone in more of an agape kind of way than an eros way now.
Oh, it says necklaces, the thing behind, and bracelets. So what Ryan doesn't know is that I placed a small P on his chair, and we'll see if through talking about his favorite music and politics and spirituality, he notices the P on his chair. Could happen. Oh my goodness.